We're kicking off a new season of the Champions Chess Tour with a new format and new people in the studio. We can promise you even more action, more time travel, and more of the best chess players in the world. So it's a big pleasure to welcome all of you to the very first day of the Airthings Masters.
Magnus really looking happy with himself.
The king can't move. Wait. This move is breaking the rules.
Oh!
No way!
This just looks glorious for white.
I can't believe he's done that.
There we go. The avalanche continues.
There's a big threat on the board.
He's taking
Whoa,
it.
Magnus Carlsen is furious.
He's going straight for the kill. Wesley So has blundered. He's blundered his knight. White king is trapped. This is checkmate handed.
Magnus Carlsen showing his genius. And more genius is incoming, and this group of chess experts will be here every move of the way to guide you safely through the Airthings Masters. From my right, Grandmaster David Howell, International Master Tanya Sachdev, and Grandmaster Robert Hess. All the way from the US, a big welcome to the Oslo studio, Robert.
Thank you, Kai. It's a true pleasure to be here.
And what an exciting day. For the first time, Champions Chess Tour now on chess.com. How excited are you?
It's great to have the chess world unified. All the best players taking part in the same tournament. Couldn't be more exciting.
As he mentions, David, Chess24 and chess.com now unified to create this one massive tour for online chess. This is a big day for chess.
It's a big day for everyone, for the fans, for the players, for everyone at home. But as you say, it's the biggest for chess itself. We want to grow the game and the players. We've amassed world-class players here. It's going to be an exciting week.
And Tanya, with the new Champions Chess Tour format, what can the fans expect?
It's going to be so much fun, Kaya. We've got a fresh mix of players. The format promises to have twists and turns, dramatic stuff, so expect the unexpected.
The third season of the Champions Chess Tour introduces a whole new format, and by the end of the year, we will have an undisputed champion.
The Champions Chess Tour is back with more incredible chess. $2 million in prizes, the biggest online prize fund ever, and a thrilling brand new format. The 2023 tour begins with 6 elite events taking place between February and September. Each event features an open qualification system with qualifiers and play-ins, locking in 56 players to the main events, where they will be grouped into 3 divisions and compete for $235,000 in prizes. Victory in the first division in any of the 6 events will secure a spot in the 8 Players Champions Chess Tour playoffs in December. Players will also accumulate tour leaderboard points across the 6 events and another $100,000 in prize money, and the unsecured playoff spots will go to the top leaderboard finishers. At the end of the year, we have 17 days of incredible chess, beginning with the playoffs, from which just 4 players will advance to the Champions Chess Tour Finals, a single elimination bracket. Together, the playoffs and finals feature $500,000 in prizes. There can only be one. In December of 2023, an indisputable tour champion will be crowned. Let the games begin.
We can't let the games begin without introducing our fourth expert in the studio, International Master Jovanka Hauska, now in the corner to keep control of everything going on.
Yeah, this is going to be my home for the next 5 days. I'm going to keep everyone updated on everything that's going on.
And the first update we have to give everyone is the 8 players we will follow in the first division this week. This is the lineup for the Airthings Masters first division. 8 players. They are spread out across the world, sitting in many different time zones. And looking at this, Jovanka, who do you hold as the big favorites?
Well, 3 colossal names just pop out. You have Magnus Carlsen, who is just the boss in this kind of format. Then we have Hikaru Nakamura. He is the best in online chess. And of course, let's not forget Wesley So, who has looked on the tour absolutely unstoppable at times.
And there is also 3 teenagers in that pack. The youngest, Gukesh, at only 16 years old. What chances do you give the young Indian?
Yeah, on paper, he's going to have a tough battle because he is facing Hikaru Nakamura, but don't write him off because he's just 16 years old and he was the one who actually finished first in the play-ins, won 6 games, drew 3 and knocked out the Titan that is former world champion Vladimir Kramnik.
Fantastic. And he has a tough start, though. Playing at night in India, and he starts off against Hikaru Nakamura himself.
I mean, it's tough. But, this is the baptism of fire. And at least, he can relax because of the double elimination format. He can just enjoy his moment in the spotlight and entertain us with some brilliant chess.
Yep. That's what's going to happen, you guys. Now, 2 players were invited to the Airthings Masters. Magnus Carlsen for winning the Champions Chess Tour 2022 and Wesley So for winning the Global Chess Championship. Everyone else had to qualify.
This is the Airthings Masters, the first event of the 2023 Champions Chess Tour. $235,000 in prizes are on the line, as well as a spot in the tour playoffs. The Airthings Masters began with a play-in Swiss tournament open to all Grandmasters. The top finishers battled in match play to determine who plays in Division 1 with 8 players, Division 2 with 16 players, and Division 3 with 32 players. 54 qualifiers through the play-in that was held February 3rd joined the 2022 Champions Chess Tour winner Magnus Carlsen and the global chess champion Wesley So, who are seeded into Division 1 of the Airthings Masters. The main event takes place February 6th through 10th and features a dramatic double elimination knockout format. The winner of Division 1 secures a spot in the Champions Chess Tour playoffs in December. They will be joined by the 2nd and 3rd place finishers of Division 1, as well as the winner of Division 2 into Event 2 of the Champions Chess Tour Top Division. The Champions Chess Tour is the biggest online chess event ever held, and it all starts now with the Airthings Masters.
We will mostly follow Division 1 this week in the Airthings Masters, but there are some huge names actually also competing in Division 3 and in Division 2. These are today's round of 16 matches. And look at that, David. Jan Nepomniachtchi is in there. Fabiano Caruana. How did they end up in Division 2?
Yeah, some huge names. You mentioned 2 there, Jan Nepomniachtchi and Fabiano Caruana. There's also Vladimir Kramnik, a former world champion. And those 3 specifically, they fell at the final hurdle of the play-ins. They did lose the playoffs. They failed to make it to Division 1. That just shows how strong, how stacked this whole field is. And they will be aiming, of course, to qualify for Division 1 next time.
Yeah, and we have to mention, Robert, it's a big deal to compete in Division 2 as well. A lot at stake.
Yeah, $10,000 first place prize. There's also a great number of tour points at stake because the winners of each Division 1, they make it through to the playoffs in December, but so do the leaderboard, right? So you have to pay attention to that.
Exactly. Now, in all 3 divisions, double elimination is the format, which basically means that anyone can lose a match and still win the whole event, but the second you lose a second match, you are knocked out. And this is the bracket for the first division. And we see the quarterfinal matchups to the left on the screen here. But Tanya, who does the double elimination format favor?
Okay, with double eliminations, it is 2 strikes and you're out. You've got 2 shots at the championship. What that does is it takes away the luck factor. It seems to favor the player who is truly the best. So the best player has the best shot at winning the championship. Take a look at this. Magnus and Hikaru, the 2 big favorites. It's hard enough to imagine them losing 1 match. Here, you've got to knock them out twice to have a shot at championship.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. But having this extra life that Tanya says, Robert, Does it invite for some more risk-taking, do you think?
It certainly does, because when you see the field, if you lose a best-of-4 match, you drop down to the losers bracket, where it's best-of-2. So you may take those risks when you need to in order to stay in this field. So I do think we're going to see very energetic and exciting play.
All right, you guys. So we have qualification, we have double elimination, we have a new time control with 15 minutes plus only 3 seconds increment. We checked in with some of the top players to hear what they think about the new Champions Chess Tour format.
I think the tour last year was great in the sense that we had so many young players who got the chance, but now we get all the top players as well as the young players, which I think will be super exciting.
At the same time, the competition is going to be tougher because Magnus Carlsen is going to be playing basically in all events, and also Hikaru Nakamura is there.
It'll be a tough fight, I think. Even for the top players, it won't be easy.
And there's going to be lots of qualifiers to all sorts of divisions. I think that's also a really good news for the sub-top chess players.
Really, you're forcing it to be whoever the best player wins.
Yeah, also for me, it's completely new to play double elimination. I never tried that, and I always thought like if you get eliminated, you're eliminated, and now you're back again. It's a little bit weird.
In terms of time control, I think it's great time control.
The games are a little bit faster.
Oh, a lot more drama, I guess. But still, fortunately, there's some increments, so you won't see like super nasty flagging of opponents.
Especially for a player like me who's gotten a bit slower over the years in faster time controls. Those 10 seconds were good to have.
Plus 3 seconds, it's just going to be like time trouble all the way. So I guess more players, more drama, more excitement for the fans.
And the action is about to start. Everyone with 4 big quarterfinal matchups. In 3.5 minutes, the Airthings Masters will start. And today's matchups are some big ones. Hikaru Nakamura, he's a beast at online chess. And he plays today against the surprise winner of the qualifiers, 16-year-old Yukesh. And then the winner of the 2022 Global Chess Championship, Wesley So, against Rauf Mamedov. And then the big battle between the teenagers, both at 19 years old, Ali Reza Frouzja and Arjun Erigaisi. But we will follow the first game between the reigning Champions Chess Tour winner Magnus Carlsen against a debutant on the tour, Alexei Sarana. And David, who is this guy? What is his strengths, Alexei Sarana?
Sarana is young and dangerous. He's 23 years old. He can beat anyone on his day. He's especially good with the white pieces. He's very well prepared. He can play all sorts of positions. And if you give him a chance to attack, he will go for you. The last time these two faced each other, Sarana did take the win.
He must be coming in with confidence. So the last time they played, Sarana actually beat Magnus Carlsen. What happened there, Tanya?
It was at the World Blitz Championship, and it was a win, not just the result, the quality of the game, super convincing win, and that's just half the story. Alexei Sarana, before taking down the world champion, also beat Hikaru Nakamura, also beat Daniel Dubov, a very dangerous opponent today for Magnus.
I actually heard you before the show, Robert. You call him the upset king. Is that what Alexei Sarana is all about? Just upsetting the big guns?
Well, he upsets the people that he beats, that's for sure. But he's also, I think, underestimated by the public. He is not quite 2,700 in FIDE classical rating, but he has beaten the likes of Vidit Gujrati and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov in lengthy matches in the Chess.com Global Championship. So with the names that Tanya mentioned as well, he has a who's who of names at his victim list.
Yeah. And if we do look at the head-to-head stats, though, there is no doubt Magnus Carlsen is a favorite at 32 years old today against the 23-year-old Alexei Sarana, ranked as number 70 in the world. Magnus Carlsen still world number 1. So what is it about for Sarana today to be able to win a match over 4 rapid games against Magnus Carlsen?
Well, I feel that Alexei Sarana, he has to start off well. We know that Magnus has been guilty from time to time of starting slowly. Magnus often needs a bit of time to feel his way into the competition. He mentions he's getting a bit older now. The new time format, he might need some time to adapt. Sarana is on fire. He played so well in those play-ins. So I feel the first 2 games are critical for him.
Yeah. And only 45 seconds until they played the very first game of the 2023 Champions Chess Tour season. It must be a special feeling to start off the season, the very first game, you know, blank papers, you know, anything can happen. What do you expect from Magnus with the white pieces in the first game?
I'm looking forward to see what he brings in the opening. We've seen Magnus try out these absolutely crazy openings, offbeat stuff previously in the Champions Chess Tour, but will he take that chance against a player like Alexei Sarana, who's so well prepared? And it just might be the strategy that he's looking at. Now, Sarana is known to be a top-tier tactician. With the white pieces, his prep is second to none. I'm actually expecting Magnus to blow out an opening surprise in this one.
Really? Do you agree, Robert?
I think so, because
Okay.
Sarana is that well prepared. Catch him off guard. That might be the strategy.
And what could that be? What would catching him off guard mean, David?
It could mean anything for Magnus Carlsen. I don't think we'll see something like the Bong Cloud or 1F3, you know, openings that he's experimented with on the tour, but something early that will get Sarana out thinking on his own, just maybe a different pawn structure. And Magnus does start this quarterfinal with the white pieces. I think that is huge for him. We mentioned Sarana is blisteringly good with white, so it does feel like Magnus rolls the dice sometimes. I think the first few moves will be quite classical, quite normal, and the surprises will start a bit after that.
And we see Magnus Carlsen is ready in his secret lab chair, not sitting in his home in Oslo. He is, as I hear rumors, visiting a friend in Canada.
The Chess Bras, well known to the
Wow.
public, of course, and well, they've been posting on Instagram and stuff like that. So I feel like we can let that surprise out.
I
of the
agree.
bag.
Yeah. So he's actually playing from Canada, Magnus Carlsen, quite early in the morning for the world #1, getting ready for game #1. So remember, it is best out of 4 rapid games to decide each of these matches. If they are tied after those 4 rapid games, then we will head straight to Armageddon tiebreaks to decide who goes through to tomorrow's winners semifinals and who is knocked down to the losers bracket. And a big smile on Magnus Carlsen's face. Is that Erik Hansen that we see?
That is Erik.
So he's got a supporter in the background. Erik Hansen is not playing in any of the divisions, is he?
No, not that I know of. I'm not sure if he played in the play-ins, Erik Hansen, but either way, Magnus, this is the first time we've seen him arrive early for a game on the tour in ages. So it's good to know he's got his tech support with him there in
Tech
Canada.
support, cheerleader, all on board. I think it's a really crucial point how rested Magnus is for this first game. He's traveled over the weekend. He's in Canada right now. We also saw him at the end of Tata Steel. He looked absolutely spent. So it's going to be a lot about recovery and energy.
Yeah. Now, how would you say that Magnus Carlsen's form is? We've seen him in the Rapid and Blitz World Championship of lately and in the Tata Steel.
He was on a tear at the end of Tata Steel. He struggled in some of the earlier rounds. He lost 2 games in a row, unexpected from the world champion. But the end, when he needed his best form, he found it. That's scary news for Alexei Sarana.
Yeah. But this is rapid chess, and it is a faster time control that we have been used to the 2 first season of the Champions Chess Tour. So we have had 15 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. This year is only 3 seconds increment. And how big of a difference is that, David?
That's huge. There's far less margin for error. With the 10-second increment, you can kind of lose your orientation in the position just for a few seconds and kind of recompose yourself. This one is purely about instinct. 3-second increment disappears so fast, and we will see some kind of real calamities on the chessboard once the players tick down on the clock. So, yeah, it will be about who adapts first, and it might favor actually those who played in those play-ins, like Sarana. Magnus, he's coming to this fresh. His last games were at Tata Steel, 7-hour time control, very, very different type of game there. And I'm expecting Magnus to be okay. He's very experienced online, of course, as well. But Sarana, maybe that's something he can play on the clock.
And the matches should have started. Obviously, some technical issues here to get the 2023 season kicked off. We do not have an image of Alexei Sarana, but he should have arrived and should be ready to kick off the season with a match against Magnus Carlsen. Do you think this is big for Alexei, Tanya, to play not only a game, but a match, 4 games against Magnus.
Huge opportunity for Alexei in the Champions Chess Tour. It is his debut in the tour. It is a platform that he hasn't had the chance to showcase his results in. In the playoffs, he beat Fabiano Caruana. And what a match that was. He had to win on demand and then beat him in the Armageddon. And as David, you were mentioning, having that practice in to start the first round where often things can be shaky, I think this matchup has huge potential for an upset. We also look at, well, the prize fund of the Champions Chess Tour. Now, for players like Magnus and Hikaru, whatever that means, it's 100x for a player like Sarana. The financial support. We've seen breakout moments for these teenagers on the Champions Chess Tour. Now, whether it was Prague, whether it was Arjun in the previous editions, these are the moments that these players are waiting for, and it could be Sarana's day today.
Yeah, we've seen huge moments for, as you mentioned, Gukesh, Pragnananda beating Magnus on the tour. Would it be a huge deal for Alexei today to win the match against Magnus?
It certainly would be. And Alexei, he does have some accolades to his name. He won the European Online Championship back in 2020. He beat Anish Giri and David Navarra in that tournament. He knocked them out of the bracket. Wow. So it's not like he's incapable of taking down Magnus Carlsen. It's just a Herculean task for him. So Alexei, great success in the past. This would be his lifetime achievement.
Yeah. And we are waiting for the first game to start. Hopefully, Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces will make his first move very soon. You guys are hinting that we could maybe see some surprises. Should we have a little bit of a bet? What opening move do you think we'll see on the board?
I think Magnus will stick to something he knows and trusts. I suggest 1e4. How about you guys?
Best by test 1e4. David playing safe there. I'm going to go with 1b3.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go with the Catalan. I think Magnus Carlsen used its success in the World Championship. Why not again here in the Champions Chess Tour?
All right. So
Kaya, what about you?
Yeah, you're not getting out of this.
All right. You said...
I said 1e4.
Okay, so I'll go on d4.
Solid bet.
Let's see. It looks like now Magnus Carlsen is leaning towards the screen. Does that mean he is getting ready to make that first move? Or is there still some technical issues?
And while we wait, I should mention that these two, just kind of unofficially online, just in some friendly games, they have had very long matches. I remember once staying up till 2, 3 a.m. in the morning watching Magnus play Sarana. I think they played nearly 100 games in that one session. And it was all so Magnus could try and adopt Sarana. And he did succeed eventually at like 4 a.m. in the morning. But it just shows how much these two love chess and how practiced they are in the art of online chess.
And if we do have anyone new to chess watching adopting in chess, what's that mean?
That means winning 10 games in a row. Wow. So impressive stuff. I think that was bullet chess, very different from this, of course. But yeah, Sarana did get some knocks in too. He did get some wins under his belt in that one.
Fantastic. All right, let's hope the first game starts very, very soon. This is the first day of the Airthings Masters. We are starting off with winners' quarterfinal matches, and the winners of today's matches will go through to the winners' semifinals tomorrow. But the losers, they're not knocked out because this is double eliminations. The losers, they go down to the losers bracket to play losers round 1 tomorrow. Would it be a huge shock if Magnus Carlsen, already on day 2, is on the losers bracket?
I think it would be more surprising to the public than it would be to me because Alexei Sarana is that talented. He's that good. And he's beaten the likes of, as Tanya said, Dubov, Nakamura, Carlsen in consecutive rounds in the World Blitz. Now, different time controls mean different games, more or less, but you still have those results to your name. That is still a huge accomplishment. And I think Sarana can do it.
I really hope Magnus Carlsen is paying these guys well. Aman Hambleton and Eric Hansen both helping out now, both switching careers. So has a bit of tech support for Magnus. Wow. Even the best need a bit of help sometimes.
So we have both the chess bras together now with the world #1 Magnus Carlsen. Is there actually like a chess bra house?
Yeah.
There is.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. What I wouldn't give to be there right now. I think that's in Toronto. Robert, you maybe know better?
Yeah, they moved it recently. I believe they are in Toronto now. And, well, it's clear that the move may have messed with their tech a little bit, but Magnus smiling, all of them happy. And the chess bras, I mean, they're very well known to the community. And hopefully they tone down some of the electro music and the partying because Magnus needs to focus today.
And it is quite early in the day, so maybe the partying hasn't started yet. A big smile on Magnus Carlsen's face, playing from Toronto in the big chess bra house, getting ready for his first game. Both the chess bras have now left the room, so that must mean we should be about to start. And now we also have Alexei Sarana joining us. Very nice to see him as well.
There's such a contrast between the two players. I don't think I've seen Magnus this happy before the start of a round.
That's true.
I don't think I've seen him arrive on time for a round to begin with.
Especially a morning round.
A morning round. And Sarana, they're looking super focused.
Yeah.
I heard that Sarana's playing from Serbia. I'm not sure about that, but either way, he's so good, so quick over the board, online, even faster. And I think we'll be about to start any second now. Can't wait. Magnus turns away.
I feel like I'm looking at a passport photo of Sarana there, right? Like someone take a photo, get him that visa, and let him get on his way. But he wants this match to start. I think the jitters start settling in once you have to sit and wait. Once those first moves are made, it's just chess to focus on.
Yeah. Or a mugshot. Guilty of playing some great chess, Alexei Sarana. He qualified from the big Swiss and the play-ins that was played on Friday, knocking out some huge names such as Fabiano Caruana and earning his spot here in the Airthings Masters to play a quarterfinal match against Magnus Carlsen. It's long overdue, and let's hope the first moves come on the board very shortly. It is 15 minutes on the clock for each player, 3 seconds increment after each move. So they will have to adjust a little bit from being used to 10 seconds increment on the tour. How long kind of thinking breaks can they allow themselves, David?
During these rapid games, you don't want to be going into the tank for too long early on. You have to really limit yourself to these really short things. You have to trust your instinct a lot more than you do in classical chess. Some time for calculation, but then the top players do that very quickly too. So I do feel that whoever gets off to the quicker start will have an early advantage in the first games of the day. But yeah, we'll see. It looks like none of the quarterfinals have yet kicked off, so we will impatiently await.
Yeah. I hear rumors it's getting very close, though. He is the reigning champion in the Champions Chess Tour, both last season and the first season. Magnus Carlsen, can he win it a third time? It's not decided until December, who is the undisputed champion. This is only the very first game, the beginning of the Champions Chess Tour 2023 and the beginning of the Airthings Masters. I'm so excited now to see what will be his opening move. Magnus Carlsen. Will he? And he's sat there now for almost 15 minutes. Do you think he's changed his mind over those 15 minutes, or do you think his mind has been set on an opening move?
I think for the first game, he kind of knows what he wants to do already. But as the match progresses, we've often seen him in interviews say that he sort of takes the decision on the fly between rounds. So I think he has it in mind what he wants to start with. And we've been talking about how Sarana is a dangerous opponent. But Kaya, it's also so hard to bet against Magnus on any given day. As you said, the defending champion of the Champions Chess Tour, classical world champion, world blitz champion, world rapid champion. Hard to call him an underdog. Yeah.
No, Magnus is the heavy favorite. We all know it, but Sarana will have to push that all aside, focus on the objective moves. He has a chance. That's all you can ask for when you're playing Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah.
Wow, I was about to say, has Sarana moved in the last 5 minutes? He finally did change his pose. It's not a passport picture. This is a live shot of him. Meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen going for the Maxim Vachier-Lagrave approach of snacking up during the games.
Tara gets it right, and here we go. Yay! And I am the first one with the right move, you guys. Yay! We have started. This is the Champions Chess Tour 2023.
But here we go. Robert was also correct with his prediction of the Catalan. So you two take the points. Tanya, we need to up our game.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Good start. Good start. What are we seeing on the board, you guys?
So this is one of the main lines of the Catalan opening. This is played by a bunch of top players in the world. Seemingly everyone has it in their repertoire right now. White tries to occupy some of the center, but black is rock solid. Look at black's pawn structure in the middle. It's what we call the triangle pawn setup, just controlling lots of squares. Black does have one problem piece in these positions. It is that black bishop, the light square bishop on c8. It tends to struggle to get out. It's often a battle, the middle game, that we will be about to see, of whether black can activate that piece. And this is still very well trodden, this path. What do you guys think? Who's this going to favour style-wise?
Well, Magnus, we saw him employ the Catalan so much in the World Championship and ever since then in the match against Jan Nepomniachtchi. And it seems to suit him really well. I think the fact that he's chosen such a mainline theory against Sarana, it shows a lot of respect for his opponent as well. The Catalan, you can't fault that line. We see it super trendy at the high level. I think it's a very wise choice by Magnus taking on someone as strong as Sarana.
And I think Sarana has played this very well. We're still in standard opening fair, but this move, knight bd7, the last move played, developing the knight, is less common than simply castling the king. So that may seem like an innocuous move, but it begs the question, what is the idea? Is there something slightly different, a nuance, a wrinkle that Magnus has to take into account? And I believe, David, that's why he's thinking. Yeah, it has forced Magnus to think for himself for the first time in this game. He could, as you mentioned there, Robert, just automatically castle the white king to safety, just say, OK, what is your idea? And that would be going back to more typical waters. But is there a difference? Now Magnus Carlsen adapting to this rapid format. He spent a long time, over a minute, on a very standard position. I'm predicting that he will castle his king. I just don't see what else for white, simply. But Magnus, will he come up with a more creative approach?
Well, knight d7, as you mentioned, isn't the most popular move. In fact, black does go shock castle instead, which is perhaps what Magnus was expecting. And to just give you some perspective, you've got over 450 games in shock castle and just about 100 games with this move that Sarana has chosen and blitzed out. Shows good preparation from Alexei's side. Now, once again, Magnus could decide to go shock castle, which is the most popular move in this position. About 158 games here. Or play the move bishop f4, as I can see in my database, with only 2 games. Magnus is definitely in a new position right now.
So these seem to be the two most logical moves, either castling, the most standard approach, or bishop to f4. I would be shocked if Magnus didn't castle. I guess the idea behind this one, Tanya, is to free up the square on d2 for the white knight. But there we go. We see on the live board he has played it, getting ready to park the knight on d2, which is actually its dream square. And after black castles, I would be shocked again if Magnus doesn't go for that. But now knight bd2 would support a pawn push. And looks like on my board we've seen something really creative from Magnus. It hasn't popped up just yet, but this would be what I would go for if I were white. Let's go back to the players and what has Magnus got up his sleeve?
Well, you said creative, so I'm guessing it's Harry the H-pawn.
Yep.
That must be it. And it comes from the school of Daniil Dubov. Dubov was one of the trainers for Magnus Carlsen during his World Championship matches. And Dubov is kind of the king of the Catalan. He loves this opening. He plays it with great effect. So the move h2 to h4, throwing that pawn up the board. It doesn't have an immediate threat, but it just can be a bit scary for black to deal with.
We see it.
Yeah, there you go. Robert, he's definitely been hanging out with Daniil Dubov a bit too much recently, Magnus Carlsen. The white king now has the question to answer long-term. Does it castle short? Does it castle on the king side? Now that you've started pushing pawns on that flank, or do you just stay in the centre, keep your opponent guessing? That's something that Kaya has mentioned in the past, especially last season on the tour. It's a definite trend at the top level to keep your opponents guessing, to kind of play a bit risky and leave your king in the centre. But yeah, the idea is clear. You want to start stepping forward even further. You're staying very flexible with white. And if Sarana isn't careful, maybe a kingside attack a bit later on.
And you definitely have to watch out for that. This is ambitious play by Magnus, and we see Sarana go for the option of b6, still keeping flexibility in the center. At some point, I am expecting a pawn trade to try and open up some files. Your opponent goes for the flank attack. You try to open on the center, try that uncastle king, put pressure on that. And as the pieces develop, I think the way for black here, David, is often to just take out the bishop on c8, get it to b7, trade the pawn on c4, pick that pawn up, put your knight on d5, and try to create play in the center, as long as white's king is not castled.
Yep, so this looks like it's a very logical plan. Instead, Sarana has developed his bishop. And, OK, we're waiting for Magnus to move now. What do we think? Is he going to castle? Is he going to decide? Is he going to go left, right, kingside, queenside? Is he just going to leave it even longer and maybe advance his pawn in the centre? So many questions. It does look very kind of surprising to me that Magnus has gone for something this provocative. It feels like just castle your king, play all the simple moves first. It's the first game of the day. It's a morning round. But what do you think of this, Robert?
Something I like to point out is that knight on d7, right in front of the queen, it's dominated by the pawn on d4. So when there's a pawn 3 squares away from a knight, the knight is in some trouble. So I do like the contours of the position for white because that black knight's a bit passive. So playing the move e4, it's very common, it's a topical idea, but you offer some trades, and that's usually good for the side with less space. That knight on d7, the knight on f6 fighting for the same squares, called superfluous knights, thanks to Jeremy Silman. So I do think we'll see a series of trades, and the knight on d7 will become a happier piece.
Yeah, finally the knight can start to breathe, and it would have a nice square. It could attack the white queen, for example, but okay, what has Magnus Carlsen done? He didn't automatically recapture. Let's go back to the game, because I was certainly expecting an automatic take on this e4 square, but instead of capturing this pawn, Magnus says, no, I'm going for the attack. He brings his knight forward. Of course, this pawn will disappear long term. It's now attacked 4 times. The white bishop is open towards it, but he's also hinting at a potential attack on this square. Look how the queen's vision, long X-ray vision there, is potentially going to hit the h7 pawn. And Sarana doesn't even blink. He's playing so quickly against this really creative idea. He plays c5. Again, if your opponent attacks one side, fight back in the center.
But the bar is really liking it for Magnus.
Yeah, the evaluation bar, we should mention on the side there on the left of the board, up on white's side.
Yeah.
Surprising to me, especially considering Sarana is playing so quickly. Feels like he's in his home preparation somehow, but we've got to trust the engine from time to time.
And the speed with which the players are blitzing out their moves, it seems as if they know what they're doing, but this is a brand new position. It's never happened before. So they are playing over the board. This move by Magnus going knight to g5, attacking on e4, and now he blocks off the center, blocks off that bishop on b7. This pawn advance is a very typical way of getting back to the position after black has made the move c5. You want to keep it blocked and you want to keep pressure on e4. I like this approach of not allowing black to capture on d4 and opening up the center.
Yeah, he's opening it in a way that could potentially be favourable for white. He's saying, OK, we can open it up, but on my terms. And what do we think? Is this involving a second pawn sacrifice temporarily? Maybe we have to jump in and show some lines here, Robert.
I think so, because it looks like after d5, black has that square under control. You can start taking that pawn on d5, and that has just happened. E takes d5 was played. White has to take back with the pawn. And if we get some trades on that square, white will then castle queenside at long last. And black will be up 2 pawns, but white has the initiative. The momentum is in the favor. There's a pin down the d file. The e4 pawn will be hanging. Maybe there's some better moves along the way. Maybe castling king was not strong as just bringing the rook to d1. But either way, we see how quickly white's pieces come into the flow of the position.
Yeah, and just to go 1 or 2 moves further, if the black bishop drops back, we can, for example, take this pawn simply with our bishop. And look at this, already devastating threats on the board. This is a huge threat of checkmate. The black king not entirely safe. And actually, I don't really see how to prevent this. This could be really dangerous already. And this is the current position. Of course, we're waiting to see if Sarana does take this pawn. There is a threat, however, of stepping forward 1 square to trap the black bishop. So already huge questions for Sarana to answer.
Wow, what a start, you guys, to the 2023 season. Magnus Carlsen may be about to castle opposite sides.
Yeah, looks very likely.
Yeah, that's going to bring some action. Now, we want you guys at home to join in the conversation, to join us here in the studio. And you can do so either participating in the Twitch chat or by tweeting us using the hashtag ChessChamps. We want to hear your questions, your comments. We want to know who you're rooting for. And we want to see your selfies as well. So share them using the hashtag ChessChamps. And actually, during this tournament, the Airthings Masters, every day we're going to give out an Airthings device to one of you sharing a selfie on Twitter using the hashtag ChessChamp. So go ahead and show us your face. We want to see it.
Yeah, and talking of faces, we see Magnus in deep concentration right now on the camera. He, I think, is trying to hide his excitement here. Magnus, for sure, he's got in a brand new idea. You mentioned earlier, Tanya, we've never seen this position before, and he's used it. And really, kind of, it's of course an important game, but Sarana wouldn't have expected this. He wouldn't have been expecting Magnus to go straight for his throat. Surprising stuff.
Surprising stuff, but I think Magnus is super happy with the way the opening has turned out. And we've been talking about this white pawn on d5 and how black can capture it. It might be the only way forward. David, this threat that you pointed out of d6, and look at this, Sarana chooses another path of vacating a square for the bishop on f6 with the move knight to h5, and the bar hates it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bar hates this move. We have to try and figure out why. Of course, it's not just because knights on the rim are dim. That could be one explanation, of course, but it must be something concrete, something specific to this position that makes the engine hate this last decision so much by Sarana. I'm trying to figure it out. It feels like white has a bunch of ways to create a double attack, but no, Magnus just takes a timeout and drops his bishop back. What do we think of this move?
The problem was it was a one-move threat. The knight attacked the bishop on f4. The bishop simply slides away from the attack. And this pawn on e4 is going to be won by white. If you try to push your pawn up from f7 to f5 to give it the pawn its best friend, another pawn, then the e6 square is vulnerable. The knight can simply hop in there. That wins some material for white. It's a fork that wins a rook for just the knight there, so white would have the edge. So I feel like knight h5, it kicked the bishop back. The question is, then what? I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't think Sarana knows the answer to that question either. Normally, if you create a threat, your opponent answers it, then you should be able to quickly show the rest of your plan. But yeah, as Robert says, this looks like a bit of a one-mover. And suddenly, white will capture this pawn with any piece. You can take it in 4 different ways next move. And again, the threats persist. This king is about to come under a huge attack. Looking good for white, I've got to say. And sometimes we disagree with the engine, the evaluation bar. Sometimes it's hard to understand why the computer says certain things. Here, it's quite logical, I feel. Black's pieces just don't look ready for the action in the center. Most of them are passive, and the only piece that stepped away and out of the first 2 ranks is this horrible knight on h5, which will be forced to retreat at some point to a more defensive square.
But has it gone all wrong for Sarana here in the opening, or do you think this is part of his plan?
I think it's gone completely wrong for him because Magnus has control over the position. Sometimes you have an advantage, but there's only one series of moves that leads to that edge. Here, all of white's pieces are on great squares. Black is one piece activated, like David said, but it's on the rim, not doing much. Now the bishop slid away. So I believe with only one pawn to his name, and that pawn is likely to fall soon, this is not a good position for Alexei Sarana.
Yeah, and I think he's starting to realize the seriousness of his issues here, his problems. He's been tanking for a while, and wow, Robert, he goes for the move you suggested. Logical, but it does come at a cost, and Magnus jumps in instantly. He doesn't hesitate to drop his knight on that beautiful e6 square. That is a fork. You've got to move the queen. The queen was the more valuable of the 2 pieces. She runs away, but here Magnus, again, spoiled for choice. That white knight is so glorious, so beautiful. Do you even trade it for a rook? Yes, you win material, but maybe you want to keep it on that square. We call it an octopus knight with its tentacles all over the board. That white knight is a real thorn in black's side, and I wouldn't be shocked if Magnus just ignores it, just castles queenside and says, OK, the attack continues.
And black always has to watch out for a g4 break. We see this pawn chain in the center, this e4 pawn being guarded by this f5 pawn, and you want to break that. And has he gone for it?
Tanya.
He does it. He does it instantly. Robert, he doesn't care about the king's safety. He says, I'm coming for your king instead. g4, and I see the eval bar loves it on the board. This has exploded already, hitting that knight, hitting that pawn. If you capture on g4, all white wants is to take on e4 and hit that pawn on h7. And it's really all about the black king. That knight on e6 is way worth more than an exchange.
Yeah, this knight is one of the most beautiful pieces I've seen in a while. And Sarana, he's facing an attack. He's about to drop some material. It just looks, I mean, I want to say hopeless, but not quite yet. It does look really difficult for him, though. The only alternative to that is dropping back the knight, but that's an admission of defeat. You've kind of wasted a bunch of tempi with that knight move, and there'll be ideas of hitting the black queen with the bishop. There'll be ideas of just taking a pawn, opening up a line for the white rook later in the game, and just the problems, they're adding up. They're building, and no salvation here.
It's one of those moments I think you have to take the pawn and pray.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to take what's being offered to me and hope I can survive it. It's not looking good. As we're noting, the e4 pawn will drop. You can at any moment take this rook on f8, but you don't need to do that. But if we do a quick material count, that's the thing, is currently white would be down 2 pawns. You're likely to win 1 back right away. And even if you do eventually take that rook on f8, it will be a minor piece and 1 pawn for a rook. That is 4 points for 5. That's not an insurmountable lead, at least in terms of material. So there are chances for Sarana. He will need to play more quickly, and he'll need to trust himself a little bit. But thus far, he has gotten himself in huge trouble.
Yep, huge trouble. And as Robert says, you just got to limit the damage. We've all found ourselves in these situations where we get kind of attacked in the opening. It all goes wrong. We just have to find ways to survive. Look for any defensive resources that you can find. And Sarana, he tends to be quite good at that. He's quite tenacious as a defender, I found, when studying his games. So he'll just be looking for ways, as Robert mentions as well, to part with material in order to survive. The longer you survive, the more confidence you build up, and maybe the more frustrated Magnus will become. But now down a couple of minutes on the clock as well. And with that only 3-second increment that we see in this new season of the tour, it's going to be a real struggle for him. All the pieces still on the board. Only a few pawns have disappeared. So still very tense, still some chances. But he needs to speed up.
Magnus looks anything but frustrated right now. He is definitely enjoying this position a lot. He's got everything. It's like a dream catland for him. The opponent has got about 6 minutes. Sarana down to 6 minutes on the clock. A really difficult position to defend already. This has gone all wrong for Alexei.
It's not looking good on the bar or on the clock for Alexei Sarana in the first of 4 games. In the other matches, we could see the evaluation bars roughly to the middle. So more tense start maybe in the other matchups.
Yeah, it does look like maybe the bar is slightly in Nakamura's favour. That was a really fascinating game. We'll keep you guys updated if the results come in there. And we'll mention some highlights a bit later. But yeah, this one looking difficult. What's your philosophy, Robert, Tanya, when you're really struggling, when you know your opponent's almost got it in the bag, but you have to survive, you have to fight back?
Robert, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I will. I'll take this one. I think that Sarana is a speed demon. He is really resourceful when he even is down to his final seconds. He has great experience in rapid and blitz time controls. So at some point, he's just take what's offered to him and run with it. He did just take this pawn on g4. He is up 2 pawns at the moment. It's not like there's an immediate checkmate or even an immediate devastating threat. So his position is worse. He acknowledges that. You can see it on his face. But it's not that terrible. So as long as he can shore up and prevent the immediate threats, he does have a chance in this game. And we see Magnus just take this pawn on e4 with the bishop, creating a threat against the h7 pawn. But the evaluation bar is taking a little bit of a dip. A knight can come out to f6. There is activity for Black's pieces, and that's the best news of all.
Yeah. And at least his next couple of moves are very natural. He did bring a knight to f6 as a bit of a defensive rock there. Black's knights, superfluous perhaps, but they do control and defend, cover some really important squares. Magnus eventually, after resisting the temptation for a few moves, he has gone to grab the material. So White has won that rook for his knight. He's currently 1 point up if we do a count. But yeah, it's more about the piece activity. White has nice centralization. Black needs to just lock things down. And I like this last move by Sarana, planting the black bishop on d6, the dark square bishop, blockading White's central pawn. You cannot allow that one to advance. It would be too strong. It would win the game. And he seems to have done a good job of at least covering things for now, holding things together. Do we think Magnus has a breakthrough now, or is he just going to improve his pieces as we see in front of us?
I love that approach. He's already up materially. He just brings the last piece into the game. Bring all your toys to the nursery, as they say. And rook to e1, centralizing it. David, as you were talking about the approach in such difficult positions, I think your mindset just has to be to survive another move. Yeah. You just have to make sure that you're not losing on the spot and keep pushing your opponent to find ways, because the hardest thing in chess is to win a winning position. We've seen even Magnus sometimes not being able to do it. So that is what Sarana's trying to do. He's trying to keep himself in the game, but it's going to be hard, this one. I like that White is materially up, and it looks like White has all the compensation as well.
Why is it hard to win a winning position, but easy to lose a losing one?
Chess isn't fair, that's why.
I was yelled at by Henrik Carlsen, Magnus Carlsen's father, once in a polite way, because I asked him something about Magnus. He only needs a draw. And Henrik said, it is very difficult to get a draw in chess. And of course it is. And it must be even harder to, as you say, win a winning position.
Yeah, all of these guys, they're super strong. They're here for a reason. They're all beasts, and they all defend extremely well. I think that's what sets the modern generation apart from past years. Thanks to engines, we've all learned that there are resources in positions, and especially the young players. They're so resourceful. And Sarana's still fighting back, still struggling perhaps objectively, but at least he started to advance pawns towards the White King. I do want to mention just a couple of moves ago, the experience of these two, especially in speed chess, has shone through by the fact they both put their kings towards the corner. Black took a timeout to shuffle his king into the corner. Magnus, even though he's the one attacking with White, took a timeout, put his king on a safer square. And that's just because later you don't want to have to calculate checks, attacks, and direct threats. But talking of direct threats, that rook on e6 now, the white rook has landed on a square that the white knight used to occupy, but still an outpost, still defended by white's passed pawn in the center, and of course by his bishop. And even if black trades off that rook, it will just be replaced by an equally powerful pawn.
Yeah, Magnus has so many intruders in the black camp right now.
Yeah, and those intruders are only going to start eroding the black position further. This last move is a bit of a sad one.
But I love it, though. I mean, from the defensive perspective, you can't trade pieces. You're just going to lose any endgame. You are down material. So rook d8 threatens, in a way. I put it in air quotes because it's not a big threat, but bishop sliding back to its home square, hitting the rook on e6 and the bishop on f5 behind it. So all of a sudden, he's putting up sturdy defense. He's much worse, perhaps objectively lost, but he at least is keeping all of his pieces connected with one another, and that doesn't allow Magnus the knockout blow.
Yep, actually everything's defending each other right now. These knights are kind of clinging on to each other for dear life. This bishop, the blockader of that powerful white pawn, it is well defended for now, well fortified. I do wonder if Magnus can start upping the pressure. I'm not sure whether you have time to bring your rook, kind of park it, doubled rooks there. Instead, Magnus centralizes his knight. Wow, nice move. And adding even more pressure onto those two kind of most important defenders. Exchanging pieces as well, as Robert mentioned, helping when you're ahead on material.
Yeah, I love this move, knight e4.
Very strong.
That knight on f6 with the spin on the d8 rook, you just want to get rid of that and your task becomes that much easier. You're also hitting that bishop on d6. That's how you're fighting against the threat of bishop to c8, as you were mentioning, Robert. And I think everything that Magnus has done so far seems like flawless play.
Yeah. He just seems really relaxed. I've never seen Magnus like this in the mornings. Normally he takes a while to warm up, but he just looks really relaxed. And using this opening idea, he's never let Sarana kind of get a foot into this game. I was talking about getting off to a fast start earlier. Sarana shaking his head. He's normally ice cold, emotionless and fearless, but Sarana shaking his head there. He has played bishop to f4, trying to trade off these pieces, perhaps, these bishops. Will that help him? This pawn has also been freed up to start advancing in the near future. Not right now, perhaps, but some calculation to be done for Magnus.
Bishop f4, you can also start thinking about doing all kinds of trades on f6 and really taking black's defenses away. The g4 pawn will fall, the h7 pawn will be not defended. I'm expecting a bunch of trades of these defensive resources that Sarana has with these two knights.
And meanwhile, we do see the bar has swung in Nakamura's favour against Gukesh.
Something big has happened there.
Yeah, some big developments potentially in that game. And of course, we've seen the bar all up in white's favour in this game too for a long time now. And Tanya predicted the future yet again. And a capture of black's defender, that knight on f6. And it is replaced, but that knight, the second knight, will also disappear any second now.
The two biggest favorites could be about to get a perfect start to the Airthings Masters, Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. The bar is also going up for another small favorite, we must call him that, Alireza Firouzja against Arjun Erigaisi in the first game.
Yeah, Alireza definitely the favorite, at least on paper. He's high rated in classical chess. Arjun had a terrible event in Vaikonze. He didn't win a single game. He lost a number of them, but we know what he's capable of. So when Arjun Erigaisi finds his form, he can definitely combat Alireza Firouzja.
Yeah, 100%. And also, we haven't seen Alireza that much in action. Where is his practice coming from right now? And these kind of formats just demand you to be on the go from the very start. Of course, Alireza had a very comfortable going in with the Swiss and the playoffs. But Arjun, we've seen him on the tour before. And what's interesting is that I don't remember these two teenagers playing against each other.
That's
so this
interesting.
could be the first time this matchup is happening. And Alireza was one of the first in this generation to sort of break away. He was world number 2, and I mean far ahead of everyone. But he sort of inspired this younger generation to come forward. And this change of guard, this movement that we're talking about, Alireza was right in the front of it.
And especially with your fellow Indians, Tanya, with Gukesh, with Arjun Erigaisi, with Pragnananda. There's so many of them.
Yeah, and to think that they're all the same age, it's kind of hard to imagine. But at some point, you felt like Alireza broke away and went a little further and sort of just giving these other youngsters this inspiration that they can do it as well. And now to see these two fight against each other, I think it's going to be a big match. It doesn't matter who's stronger on paper. Arjun's going to give a big fight. He's also super good in these speed chess, faster formats.
Yeah.
And, I just love the fact that Firouzja in the play-ins on Friday, he was playing from his kitchen. And so, I'm curious to follow him a bit later. I wonder if he's following the same recipe for success. But meanwhile, Magnus planting that white queen in the center. Black's bishop is plugging all the holes. That dark square bishop now for black, but it could be removed at any moment first. Magnus gobbles up a pawn. He's getting ready to throw the white f pawn forward to destabilize that black bishop in the center. And this one looks like we're coasting now towards victory for Magnus Carlsen.
And that queen, the white queen, was over near the king. Now it's going near the enemy king. It just took a pawn. It's going to slide up on the diagonal and go after the black king on h8. Queen h5 threatens checkmate on h7. It also allows the rook to land on e8 in many positions. It protects that square. So this is a big problem for Sarana. I think he is completely hopelessly lost. I don't say that very often as a commentator, but this position, he's getting obliterated in this one.
Yeah, and just to highlight the idea that Robert mentioned there, for example, if bishop takes pawn is played, white can even give up his rook for that strong bishop in the center and now create that threat. Those dual threats, actually, firstly, checkmate on the h7 square, but now that this black rook has been lured away from the e8 square, the secondary threat is just as devastating. And this could spell game over. At this point, it's hard to offer any advice for Sarana. He might as well play a move such as this one and ask Magnus to prove the win, to show the win, because it's inevitable at this point. You just need to find the most testing way for your opponent. It's looking hopeless. Also down under 2 minutes for Sarana. What does he play? He pushes a pawn forward. This doesn't change anything, however. He's looking for counterplay. He's pushing pawns towards the white king, but he's so far away. He needs 3 or 4 moves to create a single threat, and Magnus will land a punch before that.
And now that he's allowed the d pawn to stay alive, David, that pawn can actually go forward to d6 and also threaten the rook coming on to the 7th rank. So let's say you start with the move queen h5. It's on the board. You're threatening a mate in 1, and Sarana has to defend that with the queen, losing control of the d6 square, after which, let's say, queen goes to g7, defending the mate on h7, and a move like d6 would be absolutely devastating, coming in with the rook on the 7th rank, and this is checkmate incoming. Sarana's down to 1.5 minutes, and the clock is not even his biggest problem. Oof.
Yeah, we saw it in the camera a minute ago. He was just rubbing his eyes. He's like, what's happened? This has just been a powerful display by Magnus, and we can't fault Sarana at all. He's just not really been given a chance in this game. It's sometimes happens against the top guys in the world.
Yeah, he was in an unfamiliar position, and Magnus was on the attack. Sarana felt uncomfortable. He brought his knight to the rim, and it never quite got back in the game, except when it was traded off the board in a winning position for Magnus Carlsen. So this is dominance. This is the world #1 player for over the last decade. He's showing his force in game 1, and he's about to lead 1-0. I think resignation incoming.
Yep, I think we have the result. Magnus did get his rook to the 7th rank, and Sarana has resigned.
Wow, 32 moves, and it's over. Magnus Carlsen, he takes the first punch, the first point in the quarterfinal match against Alexei Sarana. The Russian will have to make a comeback. He will have the white pieces in game 2. The other matches, they are still playing the first games, and we're going to jump into the first game between Hikaru Nakamura, the online beast, against 16-year-old Gukesh, the oldest, against the youngest in the Airthings Masters, actually. And the bar is loving it for Hikaru Nakamura. Are you loving it, Robert?
I am indeed. And the reason why is if you do a quick material count, white is down 1 pawn, but it's essentially being down 2 pawns on the queen side, where there are 2 unopposed passers. And there we go. A5 pushes one of them. And then white is up 1 pawn over there on the king side. But white is not creating a passed pawn because black's king is in the way. So I believe the white forces will be distracted. We'll have to run on over to stop the pawns. And then black can then scoop up the remaining pawns of white. So I think this is actually a straightforward victory for Nakamura.
Yeah, knights are famously bad as well against these rook's pawns, against the A and H pawns, and white's knight is going to be completely paralyzed, stopping that runner on the A file. He does. Gukesh centralize his knight, heading towards the queen side, but yeah, this one, it feels like it should be a matter of time. The one kind of potential hurdle here, the one potential banana skin for Nakamura is that all the pawns disappear. You can't allow the white knight to trade off all the pawns because a knight on its own for black would not be enough to deliver checkmate. Thankfully, he has 4 of them left, those pawns, and I don't think Gukesh should be able to trade them all off.
What's gone wrong for the young Indian in this game?
I think it's just Nakamura at his best. You're facing one of the best endgame players of all time. You're a pawn down. It was very tense for a long time earlier, but it feels like Gukesh kind of cracked at a very crucial moment, and Nakamura since then hasn't put a foot wrong yet. Should still be able to guide this one towards victory. His king has been pushed back, however. Fair play to Gukesh. He's at least asking questions. He's saying, can you win this endgame without your king? Nakamura shaking his head. I must say, I haven't seen him play from this location before. It's different from his usual streaming place, I guess. But okay,
Ooh,
Gukesh.
Shaking his head a little bit.
Yeah, and the bar, for the first time, at least slightly showing some white. Gukesh has stopped those black pawns in their track for now. Is there a way to break this? What do we think?
Well, the good news is that one knight on b5 takes care of both of the black pawns, at least for the moment. And you see the black knight go back towards the white pawns. You're just trying to keep black stuck in place on the queen side, and then black is trying to go after the pawns on the king side, but the white king can slide over and save that pawn. And if the pawns get traded, like you were mentioning, David, that gives white chances. What you need to do is eliminate all 4 black's pawns. And even if that costs you your knight, you will be able to make a draw. Lone king and knight cannot deliver checkmate. So all of a sudden, Hikaru, he's looking a bit frazzled, and maybe he believes that Gukesh has a chance.
Yeah, and under 1 minute now for Hikaru. And wow, what a move, giving up his knight, offering that knight as bait. And he's countered very well here. He's realized it is a race. Let's go in and show this knight sacrifice again, because Nakamura now giving up his knight. If it's captured, it's a race between this pawn, 2 squares away from promotion, and this knight. Unfortunately, the knight cannot get back in time to stop this pawn from becoming a queen. We mentioned that knights are especially bad against these rook pawns, and it's going to be a new queen on the A1 square. And therefore, if the knight cannot be captured, it must be driven away. And if the white knight runs, for example, to retreat, the black pawns can start rolling once more. What a move, Tanya.
What an idea, Knight C7. I absolutely love it. As you mentioned, the Knights are the worst defenders against the flank pawns, and Knight C7 just on giving up a whole piece, but the A pawn is super fast. And the main idea of this move by Hikaru is, of course, to try to push the B pawn to assist the A pawn to queening. And he sort of found the fastest way to victory. And I'm just thinking, very often the players say that, you know what, Hikaru's expressions can be so deceptive. And that little head shake that we just saw by him, and then he plays this fabulous Knight C7, calculating it to victory. I think it's one of those moments. Don't go by what you see with Hikaru.
Yeah, he's full of those expressions which throw us off, but also throw his opponents off. And yeah, his A pawn now is only 2 squares away. That white knight and that black A pawn basically cancel each other out.
Ooh.
And finally, those head bops, I don't know what to call them. Hikaru knows he's winning.
Yeah.
And yeah, this one is a matter of time.
And we have another huge result, you guys. We were looking at Alireza Firouzja, Arjun Erigaisi, saying that it was looking quite good for Alireza Firouzja. Something has happened here. Arjun Erigaisi takes the first point.
Wow, and what a way to win. I just looked over at that game. He won it with a queen sacrifice, Robert.
Yeah, it was a beautiful queen sacrifice at the end. So he was able to take game 1. A gorgeous play from Arjun Erigaisi and his compatriot, his friend, Gukesh. I mean, he's struggling now against Nakamura, down a pawn in this endgame, and I think looks were deceiving. Hikaru Nakamura shaking his head, but when all is said and done, this one, the B and A pawns, they're too far advanced. The knight on A6 is shepherding them towards the other side. And I believe that black will simply get a queen. And if that queen is stopped, then that requires the white king to dart all the way over to the queen side. And the black king will scoop up the remaining white pawn. So this is an easy finish for Hikaru Nakamura at this point.
Yeah, and Gukesh now down to his final couple of seconds. He needs to move. Oh, he made that move, I think, with 2 seconds left. He's running with the white king towards that side. But there we go. I think we have the result confirmed. No way to stop those pawns from running now. The pawns will become a queen, and Gukesh gives up. Hikaru takes the win.
It's over. Another win for a big favorite. Hikaru Nakamura, with the black pieces, takes the win against Gukesh. Gukesh will have the black pieces in the next game, and he has to make a comeback at some point. Remember, it is best out of 4 rapid games. This one is still going on. Rauf Mamado against Wesley. So this is game 1, and the bar is as much in the middle as it possibly can be, I think. There's going to be a draw.
They do say that all rook endgames are drawn, and this isn't an exception. And here, white is a pawn up, but that pawn won't last too long. Black won't necessarily actually go and take that pawn, that very far advanced white pawn, because it's under control, it's under lock and key. The black king keeps a watchful eye over it, but the black rook is going to go and restore material balance by taking another pawn. Look at this, f7 now by Wesley, so he's trying to hint that he'll make a new queen, but he's not quite quick enough. It is becoming a race. Any chance here for either side to go wrong? Wow, that white f-pawn, you blink and you miss it, it's disappeared. And how is Wesley going to hold the draw here? Suddenly he's the one a pawn down.
That was quite a turnaround really quick, but lucky for Wesley here that the king is attacking the h5 pawn and the rook from f8 cuts off the black king, will come to defend the g pawn, which is advancing, and this is going to end in a draw.
It's trickier than you would expect, and that's why he brought the king back. If he took that pawn on h5,
what's happening?
Might have been trouble. But it seems suddenly he's winning. Oh no, the eval bar. It's the depth issue. Sometimes it freaks out, it goes somewhere, but the king steps back to f4. Wesley understands as long as he picks up the g2 pawn, the game is immediately a draw because a king and h pawn, that lone position will be a theoretical draw. There's no way for black to dislodge the white king from the corner. So that is where Wesley's aiming. We're getting just that.
Yeah, this game will end in stalemate, but I can confirm for one move, Mamedov was winning there.
Oh, really?
He actually played the right idea, but in the wrong order. He could have played the same idea, but stopping the white king from coming back to blockade this pawn. And endgames are so tricky. I wrote it off. I said it was going to be a draw. It was a draw, but there are always tricks in the position. Wesley surviving there.
Wow.
Bit of luck on his side.
3 matches ended up with winner, but in this one, a draw in the first game. Wesley So walks away. Now 5 minutes, and we will start the second set of games. Only 5 minutes, but before that, we have to take a look at some of the action that happened in the very first round of the Airthings Masters and the 2023 Champions Chess Tour season. This is today's Lisoveta Learning Point.
And today's learning point is about bringing all of your pieces to the party, especially when you're trying to attack. This is a position from the game. Alireza Firouzja as white against Arjun Erigaisi as black. And we mentioned a cool queen sacrifice did happen. That was all because Erigaisi brought all of his pieces towards that white king, and they harmonized so well. Suddenly, the black queen jumped out, threatening a nasty checkmate. The white king trapped in the corner here. A rook had to swing over and defend. Erigaisi won a pawn with his queen. Firouzja reluctant to go towards the endgame, and now bringing another piece into the attack. The black knight jumping in, hitting the white queen. If queen takes queen, this is a nasty smothered mate. The white king trapped in the corner here. Of course, the white queen couldn't do this. It moved away. But now another queen sacrifice by Erigaisi, now trying to trick the white queen into capturing, and this smothered mate idea persists. He won a very nice game. It only lasted a few moves longer than this, but if you combine all your pieces, bring them all in, good things will happen.
Your subscription makes shows like this possible, which is why our Twitch subscribers will never see ads on chess.com. Connect your chess.com account and Twitch account at go.chess.com/connect accounts, and bang, boom, voila, you're done. 100% ad-free bliss forevermore. Whether you're following our events on site or on stream, type the command connect in the chat, and thank you for helping bring these shows to life.
We're now going to take a quick Twitch break for anyone who is non-subscribers. For everyone else, we're now going to dig deeper into the first round of the Champions Chess Tour 2023. Whew, that was intense, Ivanka. What is your reaction to the first round? New time control, so much drama.
Yeah, I mean, I was completely gobsmacked. So much action, so much drama. And I can actually say a lot of it was to do with clock management, to time. And for instance, Alireza Firouzja against Arjun Erigaisi, that was so cagey, so tense. But Firouzja just let his clock run down. And then what you saw at the end, he just panicked, he went hard, and it backfired on him. And someone else who pushed too hard was Gukesh. He went really, really aggressively against Hikaru Nakamura in the beginning, but that went completely wrong because Hikaru just calmly defended everything, picked up a pawn, and won an endgame.
Did we see the players take a little bit of risks here in the first games?
Definitely, especially from the underdogs, I would say. I mean, they really tried to push the boundaries. They tried to make the favourites a little bit unsettled and to burn time on the clock. Sometimes it was a good strategy. Sometimes it didn't work, as we saw.
Yeah. And Magnus, a big favourite, he won his game. Hikaru, a big favourite, he won his game. But Arjun Erigaisi winning against Alireza Firouzja, is that the one that impressed you the most in this first round?
Absolutely, because they really matched each other. I mean, Firouzja definitely will be very frustrated by that game, and he will definitely be going back to the drawing board.
And let's take a look at the results, you guys. Remember, it is best out of 4 rapid games. Magnus Carlsen now in the lead against Alexei Sarana. So is Hikaru Nakamura against Gukesh, and Arjun Erigaisi against Alireza Veruja. Wesley So and Rauf Mamado, they are tied. And the second games are coming up very shortly, you guys. So get ready for some more action. We have started. This is the Champions Chess Tour 2023.
What has Magnus Carlsen done? He didn't automatically recapture. Sarana doesn't even blink. He's playing so quickly. If your opponent attacks one side, fight back in the center.
He doesn't care about the king's safety. He says, I'm coming for your king instead.
All right, that was fun, you guys. We have started. How do you feel?
Feel great.
Yeah.
Some really great clashes to start the day. Exciting chess. Their players are holding nothing back.
Yeah. I mean, there was exactly nothing about holding back, no quick draws, no saving anything. This was action from the get-go.
I mean, did you see Arjun's game? We got a brief look at it. What was that? That was destruction on the board. Magnus from the start with that H-pawn going forward, delivering a checkmate on Sarana almost, and everything was busted there. All out. This is the kind of chess we love, and we're getting all the action that we were hoping for.
Definitely. And we're going to follow now from the start, game 2, between Arjun Erigaisi now with the white pieces against Alireza Veruja. Veruja, he has to make a comeback at some point today because he did lose the first game. And can you imagine the self-confidence that Arjun must have after winning not only the game, but in the fashion he did it?
Yeah, not just winning a really stylish victory, but also winning with the black pieces in a 4-game match. Having a win and having more whites in the remaining games, that's a huge advantage. And Erigaisi, he plays all sorts of openings now. What's going to be interesting for me is whether he goes, again, all-out attacking approach, which served him so well in the first game, or does he take a calmer approach? I don't think that latter one will help actually too much against Veruja, because things will get messy at some point anyway. You have to fight fire with fire, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating. His first game was just incredible.
Both teenagers, both 19 years old. Do they also have a similar style, or are they very different kind of chess players?
I think they're quite different. I think that Alireza much prefers energetic play. He doesn't like sitting in passive structures. Whereas for Arjun Erigaisi, he doesn't mind maneuvering around the board. He's actually quite mature for his very young age.
Okay. So what kind of game should we then expect?
I think Arjun's very combative as well. He's not afraid of taking decisions that blow up the position. It really depends on what the position really demands. I've seen him play at the Tata Steel Chess in India, the Rapid and Blitz. He's an absolute monster in speed chess. We've seen him in the Champions Chess Tour. He really thrives in these formats. And Alireza loves fire on the board. Arjun's ready for it.
Yeah. He will have the white pieces in this one. In the lead, Arjun Erigaisi. Is he one of those players who plays everything under the sun, or does he have some favorite kind of openings?
Well, when he first burst onto the scene, I felt that he was really kind of an expert in certain structures, certain types of positions. But lately, I was looking at Tata Steel Vaikanze. He was playing everything, and not once would he hold back. He had a difficult tournament there, I think losing 4 or 5 games. But still, every game, he'd come back and go for his opponent. And that type of strategy is going to really serve him well in the long term. And of course, he had a breakout year last year, and that was due to his universal style. Just the fact he can play anything and had the confidence to back it up. And yeah, I'm fascinated to see the first few moves. Should we do predictions again?
Yeah.
It served you well last time, Kai.
Ah, that's true. I'll keep my D4.
Am I allowed to copy Kai? Because she was correct the first time. I want to join you this time again.
D4?
Yeah, we're the D4 team. Yeah.
I'll go with knight f3.
Okay, I'll go. Oh, you've stolen all the good ones. G3, just to throw it out there. And okay, we have Veruja on our picture. It looks like, is that his kitchen again? Maybe a change of scenery for Alireza.
Ah.
Well, David, the one thing that hasn't changed is Arjun's expression on camera. He always comes on these tournaments looking like he's just woken up, gotten out of bed.
Sure.
And then just goes on to blow up the board.
Yes.
He might be going to bed soon. It's very late in India, so it's nearing bedtime for him. But you are correct. Through all the events we've seen him play, he won the Junior Speed Chess Championship, beating Nihal Sarin in an epic final. It looked like he didn't even break a sweat.
Wow. Wow. And he also made it all the way to the final in the Julius Baer Generation Cup last season. Arjun Erigaisi, he did lose to Magnus Carlsen, but he played a fantastic tournament to make it all the way to the final in that one. Did he really make his big breakthrough last year, Arjun Erigaisi?
It felt like that. It felt like everything he touched turned to gold in 2022. He won a bunch of tournaments on the online scene. He was steamrolling through some kind of world-class players. And of course, 2023 didn't start off that well for him, but we know he's on a hot streak. He's over 2,700 now in Classical. He's there to stay, and we'll be talking about him, both of these players, hopefully, for years to come. I really hope Firouzja as well comes back to over the board chess a bit more in future. It's been maybe a bit more mysterious what he's been up to over the last few months, but Erigaisi, he's been playing tournament after tournament after tournament, barely taking a pause for breath, and that's helped him improve. That's the trick to success.
So I went to Tata Steel to interview a few players, and many of them would mention Alireza Firouzja as one of the favorites in the Champions Chess for 2023. And they would also mention something about fashion, that he's gotten into fashion lately. What is that rumor?
I think that's the memes, right? Online people just say that all the time in the chats. He might be into fashion, but it's clear that he's still into the chess, and we do have liftoff, so the game is underway.
Here we go. Game 2, you guys, between Alireza Firouzja and Arjun Erigaisi.
Well, he might be into fashion, but you guys should get into punditry. I mean, Kaya and Robert, 1d4 on the board.
I love it.
Nailed it again. And it's a London system.
Are we allowed to boo openings here in the studio?
Is that because it's a boring opening?
I just think that it creates a situation that is a slower build-up. It's not going to be a game. Maybe they'll show differently, but it's usually kind of a calmer start to these positions.
Yeah, I think we're only allowed to boo the London system, the French, and maybe the Berlin. Those three. Anything else is off limits. Those three, fair game. But it has made Firouzja pause for thought. I'm very surprised, I must confess, because Erigaisi has been dabbling in the London system quite a lot over the last year or so. He's also been playing the Jabava London many times. He used it against Magnus, for example, in the World Rapid Championship. So this surely shouldn't have come as a surprise if Firouzja was doing his preparation. But maybe he was just thinking, new match situation, I'm down a point, I want to play for a win. I can't just choose a solid option. I can't just play for a draw in this one. So Firouzja fianchettos his light squared bishop over there on the queen side. I was about to say, could we be going towards a Queen's Indian type of setup? But d6 there, pushing a pawn, just blocking the London bishop, the white dark squared bishop there. Very sensible. He's getting ready to bring more pieces out and just keeping Erigaisi guessing here. It's very much out of the realms of theory here. It's just about who understands the plans, the setups better in the ensuing middle game.
I also like how flexible both players have kept their structures. Black can also fianchetto the other bishop, I was just about to say, from the king side. G6 and the bishop lands on this long diagonal. White not committing the c pawn. So here, Arjun is deciding whether he wants to put it to c3 or to c4 for a more aggressive approach in the center.
Mm-hmm. First, we might see Erigaisi just get his king to safety, get the white king castled. London system players, they follow a tried and tested method here, a system in the opening. They just want to put the white bishop out, maybe on e2, get the white king castled, drop the dark square bishop back, and then start playing chess, and then start playing the game. The London system, not everyone's favourite. Loads of memes out there for it, but hopefully this one will liven up at some point.
Yep. We are following the second game. Arjun Erigaisi is in the lead, and I've seen a bunch of your selfies popping up on the screen as well. We do love to see that, you guys joining in on the action. Share your selfie on Twitter using the hashtag #ChessChamps, and every day during the Airthings Masters, we will pick a selfie winner of an Airthings device. It's actually signed by Magnus Carlsen himself. So enter the competition by sharing your selfie. We want to see where in the world you're watching the chess from, who you're watching it with. Is it late at night? Is it early in the morning for you? Wherever you are in the world, share your selfies.
So if I share a selfie of who I'm watching with, the three of you, do I automatically win?
You don't automatically win, but you automatically enter the competition.
We'll fix it so that you don't win, Rob.
We might also be able to hook you up with an Airthings device.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that more throughout the event, but air quality, we have found in past seasons, in past years, that it has had a direct effect on the players, the quality of their play. We've seen Magnus Carlsen play well when he's got great air quality. I know Anish Giri really lives, he kind of swears by the Airthings device, so hopefully whoever gets it in the end will use it to kind of benefit their chess.
I mean, so important for chess players with the online chess playing from their homes to have good air quality. If CO2 levels are super high, it's going to be hard to concentrate.
For sure. And something else that needs air is someone's position. And you see the last move that was played, the pawn push in the center gives some air to the black pieces. And it looks like Arjun, he decides to hop forward with his knight. He's keeping the tension. That's something very instructive in chess. You don't release the tension until the moment you feel is ready, because you don't just want to take a piece as it is simply offered. But this does give black the opportunity to push that central pawn forward and create an attack towards the white king. So it's going to be an interesting battle here. I think just the type of position that Alireza Firouzja could hope for out of a London system.
Yeah, and the debate is always, as Robert mentions, when to push this pawn forward or if to push this pawn forward, because, yes, you can gain some time. Actually, he doesn't go for this. He captures the pawn, but after the white knight steps back, the dark squared bishop, the London bishop, actually gains in power, gains in influence along this diagonal long term. And unless you can actually go for this king and checkmate it, then often this is something that may backfire. Instead, Firouzja, slightly surprisingly to me, captures this pawn. This is something we don't often see in the London system too much. Now white, I'm assuming, will recapture this way, and there will be a semi-open c-file for the white rook later. Still the same issue of this dark square bishop having a watchful gaze over this diagonal. This does happen, and Firouzja says, OK, you've got a slightly more open position now. I'm going to lock down the queen side. I'm going to fix the pawn structure here. Black's pawns are going to stay in this formation for, I think, forever, if they can. And play will switch towards the central squares. Black is maybe going to plant a knight on this nice e4 square and start pushing some pawns towards the white king. From your London experience, London system experience, guys, what do you think? Is this, well, who's this going to favour, this pawn trade? I'm surprised, I must say.
I actually like what Alireza has done with this pawn trade, and I think it was encouraged by White's move, pushing that a pawn to a4. And this is the point that I was going to make, David, that the knight can jump to b4 as well, because White's pawn has all the way gone up to a4. You don't have to move a3 pushing that knight. So the b4 square is a super nice square for your knight to land on. So yes, you want to trade in the center, forcing White, well, not forcing, but White wants to pick that pawn up with the c pawn as he did. But in that bargain, you kind of give up control over this b4 square, and that's what Alireza is fighting for. So a nice idea there.
Okay, interesting stuff.
Although I might say that the pawn push that Alireza made of pushing the pawn to a5, I think that gave White some ground, because just like you're bringing the knight into b4, White can bring the knight via a3 up to b5. And the big problem for Black is you can't touch either the c or the d pawns. If you push the c pawn, you lose the pawn on d6. If you push the d pawn eventually up to d5, if the knight moves out the way, then c7 will be a quick target. So I feel like that move a5 was one of those just small moves that has a big consequence.
Mm-hmm. Consequences for both sides, certainly. And let's go back to the players. I do expect them, because this is a more maneuvering type of battle, to spend quite a lot of time. I do notice, especially in the rapid format, players tend to invest their time when there's lots of different plans to choose from. When it comes to calculation, they're so quick. They make decisions very, very fast, and they're usually right. So here, where there's no right or wrong answer, where it's just a matter of taste, a matter of style, they do tend to tank for a while. So Erigaisi now down 3 minutes on the clock. This is kind of a reverse of the first game between these guys, when it was Firouzja and his clock handling that cost him. But wow, piece sacrifice. And Hania, your first instinct was what? He's given up a bishop, his London bishop, for 2 pawns.
That is the bishop that you just love. This is the reason you play the London, and he gives it up. Well, the idea is clear. You're hitting that rook on e8. You're hitting that bishop on b7. And Black has to answer the question, has to give back some material here. There's one interesting idea that does exist. Queen b8, defending that, saying that you take the bishop, you take the rook on e8, but I get 2 pieces in return. And it looks like it might be enough for Black. I am shocked at this decision, David.
Yeah, and if we do a quick count now, we do see that White has parted with a bishop and knight. That's worth 6 points. Black, however, has parted with a rook and 2 pawns, worth 7. So kind of if we do a bit of maths, White should be ahead. But top chess players, they often prefer the pieces rather than the rook and pawns. Here, White's rooks, one of them is okay on the open c-file, the other one fast asleep at home. White's pawns can't really advance, and often it actually helps having more pieces. Here, Black having the knight and bishop, because if you do whip up an attack later on, 2 pieces will be better than one. And Robert, what do you think of this committal decision by White?
Well, big choice from Arjun Erigaisi, and I'm used to trusting him. He's such a strong player that he would not make the sacrifice. He hadn't looked at a similar type of sacrifice in the past. But what we're saying certainly holds true, that the two minor pieces can team up on a square or on a piece, and rook is only one piece. It's going to be difficult to defend. So for now, I like White's position. I think everything is nice and neat. But I could see a future where Black just improves piece by piece, and then White will not be able to deal with it because there are no more targets in Black's position. What are you going to go after? Everything is safe and sound, so I do feel like as this game continues, it's decide who has the better plan that is going to have the advantage.
Yeah, so this one, despite the evaluation bar being roughly in the middle, it could go either way later on. And yeah, I kind of love and hate that decision by Erigaisi. I hate it because I would never be brave enough to play something like this myself because it's so imbalanced, it's so complex. But I also love it from a fan's point of view, because this one is going to be anything but a draw. This one, it could go either way, especially if, as we predict, is very likely at this point, Black's pieces do start to improve, do start to mobilize. And White's rook, if it can't use the open C file, it will feel like a bit of a silly piece. So, yeah, all to play for in this one.
All to play for, and Black needs to watch out because White has got a devious threat right now because White wants to push off that knight on d5 with the move like e4. Notice how the queen on e8 cannot pick up that pawn on e4 because the knight on d7 is hanging, and then you'll be forced to move that knight, and White's rook can jump to c7, which is why Alireza takes the decision to move the rook to the center of the board, defending the d7 knight, so that if you do go e4, now the Black queen is free to capture the pawn.
Yeah, it's free to capture the pawn, and importantly, the knight is defended. So, yeah, hidden threat there. I had actually missed that one, Tanya. But, of course, these top players, they do spot those ideas, and nice defensive move there from Firouzja. If we're talking about White improving pieces, maybe you can finally utilize this rook, try to start motoring your pawns up the board. You have to use your pawns. Remember, you do have two more of them if you're White here than Black does, but it's not going to be easy. For example, if you do move the rook to support a pawn push, Black can clamp down on that one, maybe push the f-pawn to control that square, maybe occupy that square with the queen, a bunch of options. And yeah, it's hard, as we mentioned, to get this rook into its dream post on c7 for now, because it's protected by a knight. But watch out for Erigaisi trying to tactically enable that maneuver a bit later on.
So we are expecting this now to be an interesting battle. I was going to ask right before Erigaisi made those huge decisions if we should switch games, because I could see on the bars in the other games that maybe Magnus Carlsen is struggling against Alexei Sarana. If you've seen that game, Robert?
He is. I was looking at the game at the corner of my eye. And for Magnus Carlsen, he won with the white piece in game one very convincingly. Here in game two, it looks like Sarana. If you didn't show the audience who had what color, you might think that Magnus Carlsen had the white pieces, because it's just a clear advantage for Alexei. He is playing very well in the second game.
All right. And Hikaru Nakamura, though, the bar all the way, it's over to his side. Against Gukesh, he won the first game, Hikaru Nakamura. And you guys shout out if we have to switch games, but it does sound like there will be a lot of action in this one.
It feels like for now this is the place to be, but we will keep you guys updated. I should also mention with Sarana, in the play-ins, he went 7 for 7 with white.
Wow.
And in the World Blitz, he beat Nakamura and Carlsen with white. So those are the games he's banking on, he's relying on. He needs to win those ones. With black, as we saw in game one of the day, he does struggle a bit. He didn't score so well. And his black repertoire, maybe not as bulletproof as he is with the white pieces. And Carlsen just wants to survive that one, but it's going to be an uphill task. Sarana doing very well.
And Sarana is known to be a beast with the white pieces. His preparation, the way he plays once he gets the initiative, so it's definitely going to be a tough one for Magnus. And looking at what we have in front of us, I think it's going to be a tough one for Alireza as well. I love the idea that you mentioned earlier, David, of bringing the rook into the center of the board with rook e1, and it's been played. The idea is simple. You really want to land that c-rook on c7. You want to hit that bishop, the pinned knight on d7. e4 is a massive threat on the board, and if black does bring the queen all the way forward to the central square, stopping that, white can make a retreating move with the knight, hit that queen on e4 and force it back and get that central pawn moving. This can be big pressure for black.
Yeah, if these two pawns land on e4 and d4, they control all the squares. They neutralize the vision of those black minor pieces. They really take away some squares. The knights aren't necessarily on great circuits right now. Okay, you can plant a knight on a nice outpost, but suddenly, boom, the rook lands on the 7th rank, and disaster for black, potentially. Yeah, suddenly big questions to answer for Firouzja.
I think a big question is why he made his previous move. The position is one that is very complicated, so we don't want to be overly critical, but h6, just kind of a casual pawn push in a position that's getting very messy, allowed white the time to bring the rook to e1 and push this pawn up in the center, kicking away black's minor pieces. So I think that h6 was just a little bit too slow in the position. He probably should have moved his queen up out of the pin, and that way his knights could be a bit more free. So I just think that that last move from Firouzja is one he'll regret.
Yeah. You can't play slow moves. You don't have that luxury in these types of positions. And maybe that's just a bit of rust from Firouzja. It feels like he's not quite at his best yet in terms of kind of the energetic play that we're used to seeing from him. But will he find a justification for that strange pawn push? This is the current position after white moves the rook to e1. And big threat on the board. He needs to solve it. He needs to find an antidote. And, OK, 9 minutes for Firouzja, 8 minutes for Erigaisi. This one's still in the balance for now. But black the one under pressure.
We do have some questions coming in on Twitter with some viewers using the hashtag #ChessChamps. There is a question for you, actually, now, Tanya. And I bet this is from a fan in India wondering what chances you give Arjun of winning the whole thing.
Well, you know, as commentators, we're supposed to be not biased, but I'm going to admit that I was super happy to see two Indians make it to this first division of the first ever double elimination bracket that we've got. We had 6 spots up for qualification, and Gukesh and Arjun both made it to the top. And in a great way in the playoffs. I think Arjun, you know, he's had such a meteoric rise. He was around 2,500, and then over a period of a year, he gained about 100 points. Went on to play in the Champions Chess Tour in a brilliant way at the Tata Steel Chess India Rapid and Blitz. Who would have thought that he would have won the championship? He won the Rapid, lost in the playoff in the Blitz, finished second. So I think he's definitely someone to watch out for. Now, when you've got players like Hikaru and Magnus and Wesley playing, you know it's not going to be easy. But in my heart, I am rooting for Arjun and Gukesh. There, I said it.
You're very allowed to. Very allowed to, Tanya. Definitely.
Well, Tanya, you must be happy to see the last move on the board because the evaluation bars reacted in Arjun's favour.
Wow.
We need to figure out why now, which is less clear maybe, but it's looking good for white.
David, I understand the move rook c8. We've been screaming about this idea of e4 and getting that rook to c7. So Alireza tries to challenge that open rook on the c file. But the one thing that stands out is now the knight on d7 is just super tender. If you're able to build up an attack on that, that would be bad news.
Yeah, this would be terrible news if we can put pressure on this d7 knight. It looks difficult at the moment. I'm wondering whether you can, for example, trade off one set of rooks. Actually, I was told that, especially in these imbalances, rooks versus minor pieces, you want to have one of everything. It's like ice cream flavors. Once your opponent doesn't have any rooks anymore here, black doesn't have any rooks, suddenly you become very tender on certain squares, and especially if the white rook gets into the game. And now I'm wondering, do you push the pawn up? Maybe you switch the bishop back onto this diagonal. Maybe this would be a nasty threat for black to deal with. Actually, now I look at it, this looks devastating. And, OK, he doesn't go for this Erigaisi. I was going to say, now the knight can be defended, yes. For example, you can back it up with another knight, but finally you overpower the knight in the centre. Once it moves, white breaks through on the diagonal. You win at the third pawn, sorry. And this looks crushing almost. And Robert, instead he's gone for something else. He's missed this opportunity and played e4. Is this equally strong?
I think it's a case of mutual oversight. We've had so much focus on the c file and the pin on the knight on d7 that looking at the f7 square being tender was kind of out of their mind. So I get why both players missed it. There's just so much else going on, but a missed opportunity there for Arjun. His position still looks very good. If you can push your pawns in the center, you have 2 extra pawns. You want to make use of them. You're limiting the scope of your enemy's pieces, but the more your pawns move up the board, one of those bishops might end up thriving. So it's a double-edged position, and I think Alireza, now he all of a sudden, with a knight in enemy camp, he can be feeling a little bit better, even if he objectively is worse here.
Yep, he's struggling, but he does have this one very active piece, and yeah, you want to kick it out, you want to get rid of it as soon as possible. Thus, Erigaisi comes over, swings his queen, and drives the knight back. He is pushing this piece back. If it has to retreat, momentum white yet again. So still looking good for Erigaisi. Maybe not as good as it could have been. He could have won another pawn to add to his collection, but still very strong. And Firouzja is having to contort himself, play some odd-looking moves, now pushing a pawn to g5. That's very weakening, very loose, that type of move. It needed to happen, though. It needed to be done. And he's clinging on to active squares for his pieces. There is a bit of a difference building up on the clock. Erigaisi certainly spending a lot longer in this game than he did on the previous attacking masterpiece from game 1. But if he speeds up, he's still doing very well. Tanya, still cheering for him.
100%. Arjun realizes that he should be better in this position as long as he keeps those minor pieces that black has under control. The pawn structure in the center takes away so many key squares. That bishop on b5, pinning down that knight on d7. So he knows the position's good, but he can't slow down. He has to make sure that he keeps up the pressure. Now, black's last move, the pawn push to g5, it controls his own knight on f4, but does give up the f5 square. And I was thinking about this, that land something on h4. I was wondering if the knight can go on h4, but Arjun comes up with another idea, David, of trying to break that pawn chain. And I look at our eval bar. It doesn't love the move, but from a human perspective, I think it's very strong.
Yeah, certainly ask some really difficult questions of Firouzja right now. How do you defend that pawn that's just been attacked on g5? If that pawn ever gets dislodged, then the black knight falls. And it's difficult. Suddenly it does feel like you're being overwhelmed, kind of stretched, your defences. The black queen is tied down. She's looking in so many different directions. She needs to defend her knight, her rook, and she can't kind of swing to the defence of her king. I'm struggling to find moves here as black, I've got to say.
I think he's going to have to slide his queen one square over to the starting square, either after the rook trade or in the current position, and that way you defend this pawn on g5. Tactics may favor the side with more pieces on the board, and black has 2 minor pieces for a rook. So the queen may be overloaded, but if you start some trades, perhaps it's black's pieces that go into the position and start creating attacks, and the white king is the one that actually lacks shelter.
Yep.
I want to point out one interesting tactic that exists in the position that the players need to watch out for. After h4, we are looking at this line with rook takes c1, the trade on c1. And David, you were pointing out that white picks it up with the rook, which is such a natural move. And black does have the opportunity, once you do that, to actually capture the pawn on e4. Because look at the geometry with that knight on f4 targeting the e2 square, where it can fork the king and the rook. You can allow the knight on d7 to be hanging because the bishop on b5 needs to defend the e2 square. And I think the tactics just seem to be working out. And look at this rook c1 on the board, and Arjun needs to be careful now.
Yeah, this could happen, this variation. You mentioned a knight check landing. It's 4-5 moves in the future, but the fact that Erigaisi has paused means it's on his radar.
This is not going to happen, David.
Yeah, I think you're right. But we needed to show that it's kind of a potential slip-up here for Erigaisi. If he takes with the rook, things will turn around in black's favour. As you mentioned there, Tanya, queen takes pawn would be extremely strong, picking off one of white's kind of prized possessions there in the centre. But the fact he has stopped means he's going to calculate and he's going to realise he has to take with the queen. And now you definitely don't want to take this pawn with the bishop because you walk into a pin on the e-file. And there we go. You predicted it. He does take with the queen. And still in the balance. But black's queen now getting active, at least creating some threats. Robert mentioned it a couple of moves ago. Potentially the white king could come under fire.
Oh, my goodness. This is one of those positions where the evaluation bar does not tell the story. We see objectively white is better with the best moves. Operative word being best. It's difficult to make great moves when that queen is sliding up to the g4 square, 2 squares in that diagonal towards the white king. And there's checkmating threats immediately. And if the only way to stop checkmate is by pushing that pawn in front of your king, you almost never want to push pawns in front of your king. It opens up diagonals, it creates weak squares, and black's forces are about to hop right in. This could be big trouble if Arjun Erigaisi does not show pinpoint accuracy.
Yeah, and it's going to be difficult to show that type of accuracy with only 3 minutes on the clock, minimal increment coming on per move. Okay, he takes a pawn, but this is really playing with fire, we've got to say. The black queen is poised. She's ready to jump in. I'm not sure whether she will immediately, but that threat will stay on the cards for the next few moves. There's all sorts of captures here. The black knight can even take a pawn on g2. You have to work out the consequences there. Worst comes to worst for Firouzja. You just take this pawn back, the white pawn on g5, and you say, OK, the tactics are still in the air. I'll make you think, I'll make you calculate a bit more. The fact the evaluation bar hasn't reacted means that maybe there's no knockout blow for black and maybe no tactics work right now. But that's what Firouzja is going to spend his remaining time on. He's going to spend a while trying to figure out whether he can go for that white king immediately.
This is such a brave decision by Arjun to take on g5. I mean, if I was white, I would see knight takes g2 with the queen coming in with the check, and I wouldn't have the heart to go for it. And Alireza brings up the queen first, attacking, threatening a mate in one on the board. Arjun immediately blitzes out g3, so he has calculated this very important defense where, yes, black can pick up the knight on f3, but then white goes on to win the knight on f4.
Mm-hmm. It's lucky that White's queen is sitting there watching from afar to defend her king. The White queen would swoop in to defend just in time in this variation. So Firouzja can't go for this. He lands a check. The king moves. And now the question is, can he get to this White king or not? If he can't, then there's a bunch of problems. You've got too many pawns now. You've given up too many pawns to go for this attack. Also, this knight is under fire. So Firouzja, I'm surprised he went for that queen move so quickly. He just recaptures on g5. Can he keep the momentum flowing?
Huge threat. Knight h3 back to f4 is the threat. You need the pawn on g5 because without that pawn there, the queen on c1 would capture the knight. Now it is defended. The g3 pawn is pinned to the white king. That's a huge threat. So maybe at this point, white has to start backtracking. The knight on f3, it looks like it's on a good square, but maybe it has to drop back to h2, kick that queen out of there, keep it safe and sound. But I'm looking at this position, and I feel like with Arjun's time in particular, it's looking really scary, despite the fact that he is objectively better. I think you have to balance the position with the clock.
Yeah, there's all sorts of calculation to do here. Either the black queen can move, you could maybe even snag a pawn on e4 and calculate a whole bunch of checks. It's getting chaotic. Let's let the players try and figure out what's happening here. I don't think we'll see an error-free game from this point because it's so easy to go wrong. I think at some point, someone's going to make a mistake, and it's just about who makes the last mistake as it gets even more chaotic. First, I think Robert's right. Erigaisi needs to take defensive measures. He needs to move that white knight before it's too late.
Can Arjun allow himself more than a minute thinking pause now?
Some positions you can survive on a minute. It doesn't feel like this is one of them.
Oh, wow. And he brought the knight back in. Look at how quickly Alireza scoops up the pawn with check against that white king. So if you decide to push your pawn up to f3, guys, I think we're going to see another sacrifice from Alireza. He's going to keep giving away pieces, exposing the white king.
Yeah, we have to show this because this would end in some cool little tactics, cool knight jumps. This would be the most natural move for white, blocking a check. It looks like you're forking two pieces here, attacking the bishop, attacking the queen, but bishop takes pawn would be pretty much obligatory here. And after a recapture, the black knight jumps back with a nasty check. And when the king moves, could we see a little dance between the knight and king? Maybe we'll see another knight check. The white king would have to jump out into the open if it wants to avoid a draw here. Repetition may be the most logical finish. Instead, Erigaisi doesn't want just a draw. He doesn't want that to repeat. He gave up his rook for the bishop in the center, and now he's captured this black knight on the edge of the board. So it's now a completely different assortment of material. It's one pawn in white's favor, but his king is on the edge of the board. Precarious stuff.
Oh, my goodness. White desperately wants to trade off the queens because if we actually do a quick material count, white has 5 pawns, black only has 4. So if the queens just disappear, white has extra material. The presence of opposite colored bishops, that's important to store in your back pocket, in your memory bank, because that means with the queen trade, it's likely the resulting position will be a game where the point is split. A draw looks the likeliest outcome. But the queens are still on. The white king is out in the open on h3. That could be really dangerous, especially with the clock ticking down.
Yeah, on Erigaisi's side here, however, pieces are coming off the board, so it will be slightly easier to navigate with no time on the clock. He's attacking this knight, he's attacking this pawn, and I think for now there's not enough attackers around the white king to take advantage of its positioning. So there's almost no time to breathe in this game. I'm so impressed that Firouzja has found his way through these complications, still with 4.5 minutes on his clock, because there were so many options, so many twists and turns just in that last tactical sequence. But we've emerged with this position, and yeah, Erigaisi would love an endgame. He's not going to be given one, however. Firouzja is going to keep going for that white king.
What do you think will be the result right now in this game? Will we see a winner? Will it be a draw? What do you think?
This is so tough to answer because this position is literally playing for all results. Everything is possible, and it looks like, yes, draw might be a likely outcome, but the path to that draw is going to be super risky. Anything can happen. One of the ideas that comes to mind for Alireza is to give a check on f5. You were mentioning the pawn on g5 is attacked, the knight on d7 is attacked. A check on f5 would defend and guard both these undefended pieces, but Alireza doesn't care about defense. He wants to pick up that central pawn. He goes for it, but in return has to give up this very key pawn. I said draw is a likely result. Cut that out now.
I think that despite the material deficit, that Alireza is playing for a win. He's saying we have bishops of opposite colors. In the endgame, that may mean a draw, but when you're attacking, it means you can't actually parry off my bishop. It's on the dark squares, yours on the light squares. That knight on c5 trying to hop into the e4 square right next to the queen, just going towards the enemy king. This could be difficult for Arjun Erigaisi. Remember, there's only a 3-second increment, and he is down towards his final minute on the clock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so easy to go wrong here. He brings his knight forward. That's a defensive maneuver as well as an attacking idea. He's just guarding that white f2 pawn and also hinting that he might jump forward with some nasty checks towards the black king. Suddenly, Firouzja has to find an equally multi-purpose move, perhaps. He needs to go for that white king, but he also needs to keep watchful eye over his king. Yeah, opposite color bishops. I've always found those the most difficult positions to evaluate, to handle, because it's never clear who's attacking, who's on the defensive. And I think both sides are playing for the win here. They would both want to push this one even further. And OK, first an attack against the white queen. The black knight sitting on a really nice square, I've got to say. And I'm just trying to look for safe squares for Her Majesty here. The white queen does find one on f5. But, OK, black's queen. If she could somehow land herself behind the white king, imagine the black queen on the bottom right-hand corner of the board on h1. There would be devastating threats there. So what is Firouzja going to go for? He could also be greedy here and take time out to grab that white pawn on b2, but it doesn't feel too relevant right now. So I would be slightly surprised to see that one.
And it would allow that bishop, which has been sitting on b5 forever. Before it was pinning a knight. Now it's doing nothing except for staring in thin air. If that bishop can slide back onto a new diagonal, staring towards the black king, or if that bishop gets to c4, you're hitting the knight and the f7 pawn behind it. That could be really problematic for Alireza Firouzja. So he should not look at the clock and think, I'm going to go flag Arjun Erigaisi. This is one of the best bullet chess players in the world. I mentioned earlier, he won the Junior Speed Chess Championship by taking out Nihal Sarin. Everybody should know Nihal Sarin for being the runner-up in the Global Championship. So you don't want to just look at the clock. He needs to play the board here. And he has brought his queen to d1, looking at David's plan of going over to the h1 square. But it seems like it was a mistake.
Look at the bar.
Well, yeah, what is happening here? Maybe white could just ignore this. I thought it was a killer threat, but white's knight is just about able to jump back and defend. So right now, maybe there's a killer move. And wow, look at what Erigaisi's done. I wasn't 100% sure about suggesting this one, but Erigaisi was very confident here. He lands his bishop on this diagonal that Robert was mentioning. And what Firouzja might have missed is that any check from behind looks like checkmate, but white's knight can just jump back and defend. Suddenly the black queen is offside. She's in no man's land. She doesn't want to be on this side of the board. She's needed as a defender, and huge threats against the black king instead. Wow. Maybe... Sorry, go on, Tanya.
No, go finish your.
I was going to say, maybe it was just a bit of a bluff by Firouzja, and now he's regretting it.
Yeah, we saw that little head shake by Firouzja there. I think he completely missed the fact that Queen H1 is not a checkmate. And after the knight comes back to H2, you realize that knights are not only great attackers, but also really good defenders. You see how it controls all the squares around the king. There are no checks on the board. Bishop E6 is a massive threat. Yes, you can fall back with your queen to C6 now to try and defend that knight on E6, but now black has run out of fire completely. No threats against white's king. White simply makes a move like b3, guards that bishop on c4, and white's dominating.
Yeah, white's dominating. The knight can come back to a more active square later. Black is completely frozen. Once you have to go on the defensive, that will only spell bad news. And you are pawned down to boot. So not a great turn in this game for Firouzja. He's looking really downcast. You see him on the camera, head in hands now. His last move was a bit of a complacent one, perhaps.
For sure, because if you're going to be a pawn down in some positions, you want the opposite colored bishops. An added bonus of having this bishop on c4 is that at some moment, the right moment, we'll see Arjun take that knight on e6 and enter a position with knight versus bishop. That extra pawn will tell the story. So Alireza, he's on the defensive. He's on his back foot. He brings his queen all the way back to c6. b3, David, your suggestion is great. Simple, strong, defending everything.
Yeah, you could make an argument maybe for taking that black knight right now, but I don't think there's any rush. There we go, b3 on the board, the most natural move. That black knight is not going anywhere. It's an easy target for white's bishop. White's bishop is now far, far superior to its counterpart. We were talking about the opposite colour bishops, the colour complexes. There's so many targets for that white bishop. There's no targets for the black bishop. It's hitting thin air, and it's turning in white's favour.
And white is still an extra pawn up. You've got that material advantage. You're out of danger with your own king. The knight jumping back into the attack. You might dissolve the problem of the opposite color bishops. These endings are always known to be a bit joyish, but that might not be the case once the bishop and the knights are traded off. This looks like Arjun could be headed towards a second victory, but of course, Ali Reza is going to make that super hard, and he moves the knight away.
But look at the clocks. Both players are on the 30-second mark, and that is dangerous territory. Look at this play by Arjun, centralizing the bishop. No more queen h1s for you. He's going to be able to bring his knight back into the game next. And if that knight hops forward into the enemy territory, there could be checkmate threats.
Yeah, we'll see that white knight get back into the action, leap back there. And also this pattern between the white bishop and the black knight. Last year, Simon Williams, the Ginger GM, he called it the knight stable. The knight is locked at home, can never move without being captured by that white bishop. It's total domination. And wow, Erigaisi just takes a timeout to keep his king safe. That white king now super safe in its palace there, surrounded by pawns. Black's king has fewer defenders around it. This one is certainly heading towards a white win right now. He just needs to get his knight maybe to a more active square. But Firouzja clinging on for dear life. And yeah, how are you guys at bullet chess? This is under 20 seconds for both players. It's getting nerve-wracking now.
But look at Arjun. He doesn't look nervous at all. And this is what I've always admired about him, that in the face of extreme time pressure, just the best in him comes out. He's still, we can see with the Valbar, making the best moves, keeping his pieces centralized, keeps everything protected. This is some great advice, by the way, that whenever you're low on the clock, just make sure that everything's protected. The bishop on c4 is guarded by the b3 pawn, the queen's guarded by the king, the knight's defended, everything under control.
Whoa, everything under control. But suddenly the position has changed. There were 2 or 3 very, very quick moves there. And suddenly Firouzja has grabbed a pawn. That white pawn on f2 was captured by the black bishop. The white queen is overloaded, having to defend her own bishop in the center. Couldn't take that black bishop. Now a pawn has dropped near the black king. It's total chaos, despite the reduced material, and black's king is on the run.
But that knight on d8, do not take it with the knight on f7. That knight's a very bad piece. I thought he was going to bring his knight back to e5 with check and say that knight is dominated on the back row. Instead, he brings a queen in with check. I feel like the black king is slithering away, and that gives Ali Reza increased chances to survive.
Yeah, and it feels like Erigaisi, the nerves are kicking in. He's giving a few checks to gain time on the increment.
Knight on d8 now.
Yeah, he's attacked the diagonal. This check can be blocked by black's bishop. The black bishop slid back to block. And still a dance between the white queen and the black king. Firouzja leaning back, though, and...
It's over. He won a piece.
He won a piece. The black king now cannot take that white knight because then you lose your bishop. And Erigaisi, we almost missed it there, but spun it in his favor.
And there's no check on the white king. The black king overloaded, and this is just game over. What a finish, and there we have a result. We've got 2-0 by Arjun. He takes a massive lead.
Wow, Arjun Erigaisi, what a player. He goes up by 2 points, and that means Alireza Firouzja, he's going to be in a must-win situation in Game 3 to have a chance of winning the match. What a day he's having. Arjun Erigaisi winning Game 2. I did see Magnus Carlsen, he did as well win game number 2, going up 2 points in his match. And is Hikaru Nakamura about to do the same?
And this is not the position from this game. This is the position from Game 1 of the day.
Oh.
So hopefully we can get an update, a refresh on that board. It looks like, OK, Hikaru leaning back. He did just take the win. And hopefully we'll get a chance to see the final position there. But I can confirm Gukesh has just resigned in that game.
It was a similar final position where Hikaru Nakamura won an endgame. So the game lasted quite a while, but 2 games in a row, it's all Hikaru.
Wow. So we have 3 players now up by 2 points in their matches. Some incredible chess going on today in the Airthings Masters. We did follow Game 2 with Arjun Erigaisi and Alireza Firouzja. Can you give us the highlights, David? How was Arjun able to win that game?
Yeah, I just want to show a few moments because it went so quickly at the end. It was fast, it was furious, and it all started around here. Firouzja actually spotted a really cunning tactic as black. We knew he was a pawn down. We knew the black king was in some danger, but he spotted he could grab this f2 pawn, this white f2 pawn, because the white queen cannot step back and capture. Suddenly the white bishop would disappear. Everything would be equal, and Firouzja would save the game. Instead, Erigaisi went on the counterattack. He took a pawn near the black king. The black bishop retreated, and we were saying there are a bunch of checks here, very tempting checks, but don't trade off pieces. Don't trade the knights. That would lead perhaps towards a draw. And with a bunch of clever checks, Continuing to chase the Black King, he found this maneuver, checking the king on the diagonal. Maybe Farouja's mistake was to not go this way. I'm surprised he didn't run towards safety on this side of the board. Instead, he stepped towards the center, and after a few more checks, we see the killer blow. A queen check on f5, hitting the king, hitting the bishop, and when the king defended its bishop, suddenly knight takes knight, no salvation anymore. Black has 0 checks, no way to counterattack, and if the Black King takes the white knight, the bishop falls. Game over. Erigaisi 2-0 up.
This whole concept of just bulldozing the Black King, jumping in there with the queen, and making sure the rook comes in with a ladder mate is everything this chapter is about.
Everything this chapter is about.
The point is, I don't want you to get a move that's not in the course and go, I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
92% of games get to this position. From this position, white is winning about 60-70% of the time. And I think if you learn these lines, that very easily could be 75% or 80% for you.
Tour director Arne Horvei is joining me in the studio to talk about this new exciting season of the Champions Chess Tour. But if you're not yet a subscriber on Twitch, we're going to send you to a Twitch break now. I still call you tour director, Arne, but you actually have a new title. What is it? Very long.
It's very hard to say much, but I'm here now as the head of Champions Chess Tour production.
Head of Champions Chess Tour production. It is the first day of the Airthings Masters, the event, the first day of the 2023 season. How are you doing? Are you excited?
I'm so excited. Yeah. It's so amazing to finally be on the road again with this new exciting format in this new environment that we're part of now. So this is really cool.
Yeah, and there's so much new stuff to the Champions Chess Tour. What is the idea behind the whole new format?
The idea is to take the best from both worlds, from the Play Magnus world and the Chess.com world. Chess.com, who has this amazing reach, Play Magnus, who has been working a lot of innovation on how to distribute chess, and see how we can really take the best from both worlds and make this the most exciting tour for everyone to follow.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest difference from the first season to the 2023 season?
First of all, that we have all the big names being able to participate in this. We have an amazing prize fund, we have an amazing reach, and also the fact that we are going from invited players now to a full open system of qualifiers, which means that everybody who really has it in them to be a part of the tour can, in theory, qualify.
Mm-hmm. And the goal, though, it must still be the same. To grow chess to a wider audience.
Yeah, grow the game, make chess more interesting, accessible and viewable for a wider audience. And now with the amazing boom that chess has, now is really the time also for us to work on this, to create a concept, to create a broadcast, to create a tour that is incredibly exciting, both for those who love chess already, but also for all those new fans getting the grasp of the game.
Yeah, and you've been a part of this from the very start, actually from the very start when it was called the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, I think, a couple years ago. COVID hit, the Champions Chess Tour was born, and now it's growing even bigger, even better. What is it like to be a part of it?
Yeah, it's amazing. You have to pinch your arm, and you have to take one step back and actually think about what we all are a part of right now, the incredible boom that's happening and the interest of chess, and that it just keeps on growing. And all the opportunities that we have ahead of us now is really, really amazing.
Yeah, and we know these first days always hectic. Have you been able to follow any of the chess?
A little bit.
Yeah. What do you think about the level, the action the players are bringing so far?
It's really cool to see. It's so many new elements now in the first day of a broadcast that there's a lot of things to put together to make sure everything fits. But what I've been able to watch so far has been really amazing.
And something else that is new is the panel here in the Oslo studio with Tanya and Robert now joining David and myself in the studio and Jovanka. And when anyone new comes to Norway, we have to give them a cold welcome.
Come on, Tanya, come on in. What's the worst thing that can happen to someone?
Nothing. You have a steel. Put this in there, whip up a little bit here, and close it. And now you are contact.
Oh, come on. We'll be fine.
Welcome to Oslo, the home capital of the world's best chess player, Magnus Carlsen.
I feel like Bambi on ice, but we've got no excuse. We're going to win. Team England.
Team England versus Team Global. We're going to challenge you guys in a cross-country relay. Go! Oh my God.
Not so easy to.
I will survive.
Yay. Come on, Tanya. You can do this.
Go on, Yobi. It's coming home.
Tanya, you got this.
I'm like the Terminator. I'm coming up. Oh my God, I got some help.
We do have a winner team. It's Team Global.
Yeah.
We're gonna head to the Good Night to play some time of pairs chess.
I just want to say, everyone, sorry, Ivanka. I let the team down. I was a disgrace.
So we're done with the skiing. Robert and Tanya did take the win, but now we're back in our natural habitat at the Goodnight Chess Pub, and Ivanka and I, we have a chance for revenge.
Just castle king safety.
So sneaky.
This is quite personal. Oh my God. What is that?
Sorry, I don't like to make bishops.
All right, we got this, we got this.
We got this. How?
Okay, nice move. I like this.
Under pressure. Yes. Oh.
Fine.
The good night! The good night!
What a game!
If we'd gone the other way, like, we went. Oh, I'm over here still.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. Queen C6 is so tricky.
Guy. Oh.
We have to give a shout out to Puma for dressing up our experts in their new, very cool Four Seasons collection. So you were comfortable clothing-wise. How did you feel on those skis, Tanya?
I was petrified. I was petrified on the skis, as was pretty apparent from the video, but I have to admit that my heart was beating faster when we were playing the chess.
Really?
We were excellent. Why was your heart beating fast?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I know I started like an absolute disaster on those skis, but by the end of it, I actually loved it.
And you got the hang of it. I'm very impressed. And David, you are, I've said to you so many times, the most competitive person I know. You were very upset after losing that battle.
I don't want to talk about it, Kaya. It was a fix. It was a... but it was a lot of fun, and congrats to these two. It's all my fault, though. Ivanka was awesome. I just let us down in both the skiing and the chess.
Yeah, good start for Team Global in the Oslo studio. Nice. All right, and it's a good start, especially for three players in the Airthings Masters. These are the results after 2 games so far. Magnus Carlsen is up by 2 points. That means Alexei Sarana, he has to win game 3 to take it to a game 4 situation. Is the same for Gukesh. In a must-win situation in game 3, Hikaru Nakamura is up by 2 points. And so is Arjun Erigaisi, winning 2 games in a row against Alireza Firouzja. Wesley So and Rauf Mamedov, they have played 2 draws and they are tied so far. So Robert, who's impressed you the most so far today?
It has to be Arjun Erigaisi, because Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, they're always the favorite, unless they're playing each other, in which case it's a toss-up. But for Arjun Erigaisi, he's been unbelievable. He's finding the tactics. Even when he's down on time, he is still playing the best moves, and he earned himself those 2 wins.
Definitely. We're going to follow the next game between Hikaru Nakamura and Gukesh, with Gukesh being in a must-win situation. Hikaru on fire today. So what is it about for the 16-year-old Indian right now, Tanya?
he had a phenomenal run at the qualifiers. In the Swiss plane, he finished right at the top, and then very strategic, bold decision of playing against Vladimir Kramnik in the playoff and won that 2-0. And then what he gets as a prize is a first-round matchup against Hikaru Nakamura, an absolute beast, a monster in this format. And undoubtedly, Hikaru is a big favorite, and he's showing us why. Gukesh has to win on demand. He has to give this next game everything and more. It's a tough task ahead of him.
Yeah. Must-win situation for 3 players. We couldn't have asked for a more dramatic start to the Champions Chess Tour 2023. And here we go. Game 3, Gukesh, with the white pieces.
We should have asked for another prediction from you, Kaya. You would have got it right again. Another D4. And no Queen's Gambit here. Nakamura, which opening will he choose? Of course, he plays everything under the sun, Nakamura. He tends to go towards the Queen's Gambit declined when he's in doubt, when he just wants a solid position. For Gukesh, it's not just about getting out of the opening, it's about getting out of the opening with a bunch of pieces left, with a very tense position. I do feel that the only way to beat Nakamura for Gukesh now will be to attack him somehow. The endgame has proven to be Nakamura's forte in this matchup, today at least. And it's another London system, though. So do we boo this one? Or do we think it's a great match strategy for Gukesh?
Well, you mentioned he needs to keep all the pieces on the board. So from that approach, I think it makes a lot of sense. You're hoping for the long game here. Hikaru needs just a draw to wrap up this match. So it's definitely a tough task ahead of Gukesh. He's going to throw everything he's got. He starts slow. One of the things that players often end up doing in a must-win situation is play these rash openings. And they don't end well. So I like that Gukesh has at least kept calm and chosen this line, which kind of gives him the opportunity to get a middle game, to just play for a normal game, and hopefully not get into an end game like you're mentioning.
Yeah, he's going to keep all the pieces on the board. This is a rare sideline of the London system where White has had to commit a move to playing Rook B1, just defending that B pawn. Black's queen coming out early. That comes with some risk involved, but at least White does get the time to set up this triangle of pawns supporting the London bishop. But wow, Nakamura trading off the light square bishops.
Looks like a French defense gone right for Black.
Very right.
The bad piece for Black and a French is that light square bishop. But I know Simon Williams, Ginger GM, he always loves these lines of the bishop sliding out to D7, then to B5, offering a trade. And that means that the pawn structure is very solid for Black. F7, E6, D5. Great foundation in the center for Hikaru here. And now that the bishop's out of the way, he can then develop his knight and keep everything under control.
Yeah, it looks really nice. As a bit of a bonus here, if the bishops get traded off, Black does prevent the White king from castling. The queen uses her vision there to control one of the squares the king would want to castle through. And of course, you can't castle through check. You can try and kick the queen away, for example, with a move like A4. But the Black queen, for example, could keep itself on this diagonal. And I'm struggling to find ways now to keep the pieces on the board. I mentioned that Gukesh ideally wants to keep the tension. He's clearly been surprised in this opening. He's burnt over a minute already. It's only move 7, and no clear way to keep the bishops on. Apart from this one, wow, pawn to C4, moving the pawn for a second time in the last 2 moves. He's literally just pushed that pawn, but he moves it again. And at the cost of time, at least, he'll keep some tension. And I'm not sure now whether he'll take back with his knight or his bishop. Either way, at least he will ask Nakamura some questions. I do fear for Gukesh if Nakamura is in home preparation. However, it does feel like the type of position where if you've done your homework, you will be able to just hoover off a bunch of pieces. And we see those pieces disappearing. OK, a queen check, a double attack, but luckily White can slide the knight back to defend. And a bunch more exchanges are happening. What has Nakamura just reacted to? He's talking to himself, just asking himself the question, what's happened? He did just take a pawn. Is this a mistake? Maybe he forgot his preparation? Looks very natural to me, Robert.
Yeah, it looks like a completely normal move. So it could be a Hikaru gesticulating, just kind of putting on appearances for the show. But at the same time, maybe there is something he didn't like, because sometimes when you release the tension too early, that gives the opponent some extra opportunities, some freedom for the pieces. I think Black's position looks great. White has an isolated pawn. So this pawn on D4 cannot be defended by another pawn. The good news inherent to having an IQP, isolated queen pawn, is the adjacent files are open. So a rook can eventually slide to the E file, a rook to the C file. That's great. But the pawn's a perennial target. Black has no risk in the foundation of his position. So I think Hikaru has done everything you could ask for from a player having the black pieces.
Yep, and here White has castled, saying, okay, you can take my pawn on d4, but it will come at the cost of time, and Nakamura, meanwhile, brings his rook across. Again, not necessarily to even win this pawn, but to control its advance. And let's go back to the players. This one will result in a very tense middle game. White has the eternal weakness, so needs to compensate for it with active play. Meanwhile, Gukesh trying to kick the black queen out of his camp, saying, get out of here, you've done enough, you've caused enough nuisance so far. And maybe Nakamura could grab this pawn in the centre next move if he's feeling greedy. Remember, a draw suits him, though, so plenty of solid moves, solid alternatives at his disposal as well.
Okay. 3 players are in must-win situations in this round of games. Gukesh is one of them. Can we see that in the way he has started this game, that he's just going all out?
Yeah, I would say yes. He's going for the London system. He's trying to keep pieces on the board, but Nakamura hasn't really allowed him to. There's been a trade of 2 sets of pawns, 1 set of minor pieces. Gukesh, I think he goes all out in every game, Kaya. That's the thing about him. It's hard to tell when he's playing solid. I don't think I've ever seen Gukesh play solid. He's always very ambitious, and that's why he's already reached the upper echelons of world chess at such a young age.
And there is a question there. What do you guys think about Gukesh's opening choices, Robert?
Well, I think that he's playing what he knows, and he needs to take risks somewhere. The problem is, in certain lines that have risk, is if somebody has studied it, in which case, in this case, Hikaru certainly has figured out this opening, you can combat it in some forcing ways. And that's the last thing you want in a must-win game, is to have a forcing variation that your opponent knows. So at least in the current position, we have White with the bishop pair. Only White has a light square bishop, whereas Black has the 2 knights. So there is something to play for. This game isn't going to immediately conclude. So I think that I like his choice here in game 3. The earlier games, I didn't look into enough depth, but I feel like Hikaru is Hikaru at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And Tanya, earlier the fans were asking about Eragaisi. Is there the same level of support in India for Gukesh?
Oh, 100%. A huge level of support for the Indian youngsters. And Gukesh has so far really shown his class in classical play. We had his breakout performance during the Olympiad.
Oh, wow,
what a phenomenal tournament that was. But after that, he had a couple of disappointing results. Even the Tata Steel was his debut, but it was a lukewarm performance, at least by the standards that he sets for himself. A huge learning experience. We haven't seen Gukesh as much in rapid and blitz. We haven't seen him that much in speed chess, which is what made it even more impressive, his run in the qualifiers. So playing against Hikaru here, I think this is a lot to do with experience. We were talking about opening choices. I like that he's gone for the initiative. He doesn't mind giving up that d4 pawn for keeping Black's king in the center. We see a developing move there by Hikaru, not getting greedy in the center. He had no time to do that, allowing checks on the b5 square. g3, a nice solid move. Eventually what White wants to do is start pushing the b pawn up the board. You want to go b4, you want to get b5. Now the rook is on c1. It's X-raying that queen on c7. So as far as opening choices are concerned, I think in a win-on-demand game, Gukesh has done it right so far.
Yeah, it's hard to get a big advantage against these top guys in the world from the opening, but he's got all the pieces still on the board, most of the pieces still on the board, and still a lot to play for. Meanwhile, how are you guys feeling? Because we can see the air quality in the studio here in Oslo.
We should be feeling good.
We should. Lots of green there.
I'm feeling great, and lots of green next to me because Tanya, she wore the good color today, and I feel like, you know, you can't win them all. And India, right now, 2 players in the top division, but you should be pretty happy. Arjun Eragaisi, he is taken down, at least in the first 2 games, Alireza Firouzja, and Gukesh has a chance here in game 3, even though Nakamura's position is very solid.
And this is why you're glad that this is a double elimination bracket.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many Indian fans here rooting for Gukesh, rooting for Arjun. And even if Gukesh has a tough start in this match, it doesn't mean the end of the road for him. He still has one more shot at the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's guaranteed to be here tomorrow, no matter what.
Definitely.
And meanwhile, Gukesh is throwing those pawns forward before it's too late. He throws his pawn forward to before. I messed up that pun. Okay, he's played b4. And he's trying to push even further forward to dislodge those black knights. And yeah, for Nakamura, you're rock solid. You're controlling the square in front of the isolated pawn. Black's knight on the d5 square looks fantastic. You never really want to trade that off if you're Gukesh either, because it will come at the cost of your beautiful bishop pair. But the question for Nakamura is whether you just stay solid, curl up into a ball, cover all your squares, which he's doing right now. The black queen also very passive. But yeah, what next? And I think that's the question for both players, perhaps. Does Gukesh just continue advancing his pawns, maybe on both flanks, on both sides of the board, to try and create some weaknesses, use maybe some pawns as a battering ram? Or do both players just sit and maintain the status quo? It's a very tense position, open to interpretation in terms of plans. And I'm still slightly biased because I love playing against isolated pawns. But yeah, Gukesh, bishop pair, nice pieces, perfectly placed pieces. It's just about, yeah, the next step.
Yeah, and a draw is not enough for him. He has to win this game.
It's never easy against Nakamura, gotta say.
Sorry, go ahead, Tanya.
That's the biggest problem, that, you know, he's done everything right in this position. All the pieces are playing, but what is the next move? How do you improve an already very improved position here? The advantage that white does have in return for that isolated queen's pawn is the double bishop pair. But how good is that with that bishop on e3 just playing such a big defensive role? And Kai, as you mentioned, a draw is not enough. At some point, you have to start taking risks. And here, Gukesh is showing what his intentions are. He wants to try and set up a battery along the b1, h7 diagonal. He is trying to target that h7 weakness. Ideas of h4, knight g5, really hitting that soft spot on h7 come to mind as well. So Gukesh now trying to build that uneven playground in the middle game.
Yeah, and we saw it work really effectively for Magnus Carlsen in game one of the day, going for that h7 pawn. It happens in a bunch of different openings. That pattern is very, very important to remember. If black ever does try and blunt the effect of this bishop, then I think the second plan you mentioned, Tanya, that will come on the board very, very shortly. I don't think Gukesh will hesitate from throwing this pawn up the board. You can often just step forward with the white king as well and slide the rook behind to propel it even further. So still some ideas. I do expect Hikaru here to rotate his knights, as he likes to say on his stream, to maybe drop this knight back and try and bring it to a more active square. Maybe, for example, then he could start trying to trade off some pieces, trade off some rooks. Black is still, defending everything, covering everything. But Gukesh is hinting at an attack, making Hikaru pause.
And that bishop on e3 isn't really doing all that much. So there's no rush for Hikaru to take that bishop on the e3 square. Because as soon as you do, white captures towards the center with the pawn on f2. And once that happens, look at the quality of the bishops. We keep talking about opposite colored bishops. The bishop on d3 staring all the way across towards the black king, but also can move one square forward to put pressure on the black queen side, whereas the bishop on f6 staring into a brick wall, a defended pawn on d4. So that I don't think would be the best transition for Nakamura.
Yeah, definitely something not to rush with. The knight, if we compare the pieces that left the board, the knight just one move earlier is far superior to this piece. And just as we say that, commentators curse Robert. Wow, he plays the move we were just saying wouldn't be a good idea. And wow, he's just happy to fianchetto now. He's going to drop his bishop back and say that this is a nice solid piece, but you're right, it does stare against this kind of statue of pawns, this granite statue on d4. What a weird decision, I've got to say, from Nakamura. That must be influenced, surely, by the fact he's got draw odds in this game.
Yeah, if he finds a concrete solution, he's going to go for it. So it's something you strategically don't want to do, but maybe he has it all mapped out. And who would be surprised if Hikaru has seen it through to the finish line? Takes, and maybe he has the result in the bag.
Yeah, at some point he will try and prepare a pawn break to open diagonals for his bishop. Meanwhile, Robert, again, seeing deep into the future, some pressure now along this diagonal, met by a knight retreat. Still very tense, but now I think, despite what the evaluation bar says, I would slightly prefer white's chances, white's position. At least easier to play, perhaps, in the near future.
It's a dramatic set of games right now. Gukesh, we know he has to win. So does Alireza Firouzja. But I see the bar is completely black. Is actually Arjun Erigaisi winning another one?
Yes, I'm just looking over at that board and it looks like Firouzja's taking some huge risks in the opening. It's already moved 15 there. White's king is stuck in the centre, hasn't castled, he's barely developed any pieces, and Erigaisi looking in top form right now.
And then Magnus Carlsen, he as well, with a draw or a win in game 3, will take the match, and the bar is saying he is winning. Is that the full story?
Yeah, still some work to do there. It's level material, but strategic domination for Magnus Carlsen. He's fully in control of that one, and he just needs to draw, remember. So Magnus, he's going to get that one. He's going to guide it home.
And you guys remember that you are in full control of decisions in the studio. If you feel we need to jump to another game, then you call out.
I was going to say that before White decided to go G4, G5. So he's advancing the pawn in front of his own king, and this is getting pretty hot on the board as it is. And Gukesh, of course, has to win on demand to keep the match going, and he's doing everything he can to get a game. I like this move, queen to B5. It is towards the queen side, but what you want to do is get further into your opponent's camp. He's eyeing that D7 square from where he can hit the knight on E7. He can hit the rook on C8. The B7 pawn is soft. So Gukesh here really creating his chances.
Yeah, he's going for it. This is what he needs to do. He needs to create some imbalance. There's already the opposite colour bishops, which doesn't necessarily help long-term winning chances. So he has to create direct threats. I like it, Tanya. I'm not sure I'd go for it, this white G pawn push, but in must-win situations, yeah, you've got to try something.
At least there's an imbalance, right? All of a sudden, we have a situation where white is going forward. That could come at the cost of overextension, and then maybe it's the white king that will find itself in trouble. But if the king doesn't get checkmated or there's no attack, then I like the mobility of white's pieces. The bishop on G7 is completely blunted by white's pawns. So some trades will be necessary from black. I think that black does have a good position, very strong foundation there, as I've been saying all game. But I do like it from the principle that a draw is equivalent to a loss. Gukesh has to go for it.
Yep. He has to go for it. And Nakamura, for the first real time in the game, he's in the tank. He's trying to figure out how to kind of neutralize the pressure here. I would just maybe move the pawn that's under attack. I don't see too many active choices for black right now. And still solid, very passive, especially the black minor pieces. But Nakamura, I think solidity is the keyword right now for his position. I'm also looking at the other games, a bit distracted here because it does look like Erigaisi's found a really powerful move in his game. He's going to take that one home to victory soon. But Nakamura here making some faces. Not entirely happy, it feels like, with his position, but he knows he's still done nothing wrong. So he shouldn't be punished yet by Gukesh's really ambitious play.
And we know we shouldn't believe the expressions that Hikaru gives 100%. They can be super deceptive. He needs just a draw. So, of course, there's a lot of margin here for Hikaru. But Gukesh creating his chances. I'm also keeping an eye out on the Arjun board. What a move by Arjun, David. And we can perhaps jump to that game because it's a big moment for Arjun.
All right. We're going to do that then. Arjun Erigaisi has been crushing it today, winning the first two games against one of the very best teenagers in the world, Alireza Firouzja. But the bar is saying he is winning another one, Arjun Erigaisi. So we're going to head over to that game. Is that win getting very close for him?
Yeah, it is, because for Alireza Firouzja, he needed to take a lot of risks. And that hibernation we've been talking about, where has he been? Nobody has seen him in tournaments, not even online. That can hurt you. You need practice. He may be the higher-rated player. He may even be the stronger player. But with the recent string of events that Arjun Erigaisi has played in, whether it be the World Rapid and World Blitz Championships, then in Tata Steel, he's been working on his game, honing his craft, and it's showing in this match.
Yeah, he's looking really sharp, Erigaisi, and it was just a one-move blunder, we should mention, from Firouzja in this game, but he has been taking risks and necessary risks. So it's not just about this game, which he most likely will lose, but the first two games of the day didn't look like he was himself, getting out-calculated by his contemporary there. Both 19 years old, of course. We'll see that clash for years to come, and we'll see them battle it out for 10, 20 years, hopefully, these two at the top of world chess. But we're waiting for that game to appear on our boards. I don't think Firouzja has moved in the last 5 minutes because he's been so stunned by a strong reply by Erigaisi.
And we're jumping over
to the
game. It's a must-win situation for Alireza Firouzja. But you said it, David. He's stunned.
He's stunned, and look at his pose, Firouzja, right now. He's only got 4 minutes left. He's been thinking for so long. Black's queen jumping into the center was the last move on the board, and while Firouzja tries to understand how to survive here, how to cope with the ruins of his position, let's go back and show the last couple of moves, because Erigaisi's last move, this queen jump, was really spectacular and really strong. And it all started around here. It looked like Firouzja played a very natural move, attacking the black knight. Did the knight have to drop back? Erigaisi said no. Counterattacking is another option. He attacked this white knight in the center, and Firouzja here, the big mistake was not to start trading off pieces. Instead, he put his knight on the rim. Remember, this was a mistake that Sarana played in the first game against Magnus Carlsen, putting the knight on the side of the board. There has to be a concrete reason. You do lose control over the center. Yes, the bishop is opened up, to defend this knight, but you lose control over the all-important d4 square, and queen to d4, landing the queen, offering a trade here. it's crushing. After queen takes queen, for example, black, I don't know whether you take the queen or you flick in a knight check, but black can choose either, it feels like. And when the king moves, we just recapture the queen and too many threats. This rook is under fire, this pawn is under fire, and if you take a time out to move the rook, black does get a bunch of pawns on this queen side. There's actually 3 or 4 very tempting options. I'm not sure which to choose from. You could take this pawn, you can take this pawn, and either way, you will eventually win an endgame.
And let's remember that all Arjun Erigaisi needs with the black pieces is a draw, but that would be a winning position with no chances for white. So that is likely we're going to see something like that. We saw a queen trade on the board, and I like knight c2 check. Such a good intermezzo. You don't just have to recapture on the d4 square. Maybe it's better for your knight on b4 to land where the queen is, and we just saw knight c2 check played. Arjun Erigaisi doing everything right in this match.
Yeah, and just to follow this variation, knight takes queen is about to happen, bishop takes bishop, and it does look like white is creating a double attack here, but black can solve this in a bunch of ways. I think you can even capture this pawn, attacking the white rook, and this one does get a bit complicated. I think Firouzja is banking all of his hopes on this. You can attack this black knight, but in a position such as this one, defending the knight, bishop takes rook. Look at this. The white rook is almost powerless in the corner. Look at the strength of the 2 black knights combined with their protectors, the 2 pawns. Black is actually temporarily a whole rook down, but you will gain back at least a piece with interest.
And those 2 knights are worth so much more. This whole match by Arjun has been his own version of playing the Queen's Gambit. His play with the Queen has been so strong. In the first round against Ali Reza, he sacrificed an entire queen, threatening a checkmate. In the second round, we saw this amazing queen dance where he eventually won a piece. And Queen d4 in this game, what a star move. And I think it all comes down to the geometry that he's been seeing with the tactics. And that's not an easy thing to do when you're playing against a player like Ali Reza, who himself is so strong when it comes to tactical play. But Arjun's just been on top of things from round 1 in this one.
Yeah, and how quick has he been? He's still got 9 minutes on the clock. He's sacrificed a whole rook when he only needs a draw. He's taking huge risks, but he's seeing the board so quickly, so well right now. And yeah, fair play. He's going to take the win.
And they often say when all you need is a draw, the best thing to do is play your normal chess. You're not playing for a win necessarily, but as soon as you start getting overly solid, you might get a bit passive, not thinking about all your options. That's no longer chess. That's just subjective thinking. So Arjun, you couldn't ask for a better match from him. He is about to maybe even 3-0 Alireza Firouzja. What a performance from Arjun, especially after a tough event in Tata Steel.
Yeah.
Wow, and for the first time today, we're seeing Wesley So in trouble. That's the closest match so far on the scoreboard. It's 1-1 over there. But Mamedov, one of the underdogs of Division 1 right now, looks like he's winning according to the evaluation bar. We haven't followed that one too much, but we should just mention that one is guaranteed a game 4, so we will follow it a bit later.
You will definitely get to see Wesley So in action against Mamedov, game 3 going on. And Wesley So in trouble, and so is Alireza Firouzja. Do you think Alireza is shocked at the level Arjun has brought to this quarterfinal?
I don't believe that Alireza would underestimate Arjun. I think Arjun has shown phenomenal performance, but definitely going into the match, many would have picked Alireza as a favorite on paper. But the match has gone on to show that you can never underestimate Arjun, and it looks like Alireza is staring at the face of a match defeat here.
And we have a winner already in the quarterfinals, Magnus Carlsen, the world #1. He plays a draw in game 3 against Alexei Sarana to take that match after only 3 games. That means Magnus Carlsen, he stays on the winner bracket. Alexei Sarana will be knocked down to the losers bracket to play losers round 1 tomorrow. Magnus Carlsen goes through to the winners semi-finals tomorrow. What a way to start for Magnus.
He's looking good, and it could have been 3-0 there as well. Magnus took the draw from a position of strength. So, yeah, unfortunately, Sarana ran into Magnus on a good day. And it's hard for anyone, even at their best, to compete. But it's nice to see the world #1 looking strong.
Yeah, it could not have gone better for Magnus. And I think when Magnus has lost a game to any player, when he plays him the next time, he just comes back with such a vengeance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he did today. He wanted to... This was a grudge match for Magnus, and he proved his point.
Yeah. Beating someone once isn't revenge, I think is a quote from Magnus Carlsen. But today, he beat him twice and could have won 3 games.
Yeah, sound defeat for Magnus Carlsen and for Alexis Sarana. It doesn't get any easier. That's what happens in the Champions Chess Tour. You may lose a match, it's double elimination, you're still in the thing, but it's likely that he's going to face off against Alireza Firouzja. So you lose to Magnus in an open tournament. You say, oh, you get to play me. Great. You're going to go beat me and then go play them again. Now he plays likely Alireza Firouzja. Yikes.
Yeah.
Tough matchups ahead.
Yeah. Magnus Carlsen will face the winner of this matchup in tomorrow's winners semifinals, and that looks like it will be Arjun Erigaisi. Those two played each other a bunch of times last season on the Champions Chess Tour.
Yeah, and often Magnus Carlsen was his kryptonite, Erigaisi, the only one who could stop him at times. So this position, back to the game, we do see all of those black pawns advancing. Look at the left side of the board, those black pawns marching down them. And I think it's inevitable. One of them will eventually cost white material or become a new queen. And some of the viewers at home might be wondering, why is this position so hopeless for white? It's actually level material. White has a rook, black has a knight and 2 pawns, but it's just the pure domination, the pure control that black has on the queen side. And once the black knights step out of the way of those pawns, they will continue their inevitable advance. And meanwhile, white has no counterplay, no source of activity for the remaining pieces. White's knight feeling a bit stuck, not able to jump over to defend. White's other rook, which is finally mobilized, not really going anywhere anytime soon. So with a bit of care, with a bit of control, such as this last move, using that pattern that Robert used earlier, pawn dominating that white knight. Yeah, this shows real class from Erigaisi.
That's so nasty because it's completely unnecessary. It feels like he can just push his pawns up the board, but he doesn't want to give his opponent a sliver of hope. That knight on f3, it's not going anywhere. Those pawns can be pushed in a few moves, and so a great play. It's just complete dominance from Arjun Erigaisi. I love that move. f6, just making sure that knight's got, look at this, it goes to the rim. It's not going anywhere from there.
It's already been there, that knight, and it's going to start retreating, hopping around, trying to find a better circuit. I think here Erigaisi will just take a timeout, defend that f6 pawn, maybe use the black king, the only piece that isn't doing too much right now. And yeah, white is playing without a couple of pieces. Look at that sad white rook, completely controlled by the black knights. Nowhere to go. And this one should be a matter of technique, as they say. It's also 30 seconds against 6 minutes, which doesn't help at all.
I was looking at Nora there with a coconut drink in Panama. That looked so nice.
Jealous at all?
Yeah, a little bit. It's quite cold in Norway, as you guys now know.
It's not looking warm on the position for Firouzja either. Look at this knight retreating, struggling to find a way back into the game. It's just really tough. It's been a really hard day for Firouzja.
Yeah. Super hard. And he's got knight g2. He wants to find a way to the center of the board. He wants to come on to f4, d5, try and create pressure on f6. Also make sure that black pawns on the queen side find it difficult to advance. It is winning for Arjun, but he needs to show some good technique here. He needs to find a way to push those pawns. It's not over till it's over. And I still think there's work to be done here, guys.
Yeah, sophisticated move, though, from Erigaisi. That black rook landing in the center of the board. Again, controlling any knight jumps, stopping the white knight jumping in. And wow, Erigaisi, blow after blow, tactically so sharp today. This move shocked me, I've got to say. At first, it looks like this pawn can simply be captured, but Robert, I think there's a tactical justification.
Yeah, so that pawn is captured. Black will not recapture on c3. The knight will drop back to b5. And you may think, oh, why don't you just give me your pawns? But there's knight c3 check, and it forks the king and the rook. That will scoop up material for black. So this is a devastating tactic in Arjun's favor. He is seeing everything. He's being preemptive. He's making sure the white knight couldn't get anywhere. And now he's deciding to pounce when the moment is right.
Yeah, and now simply this knight is going to capture this pawn. It's not a fork this time because the white rook moved, but it's simply a check, driving the white king further away, and these pawns are just going to start rolling. You can push them now, you can push them later. It's going to be inevitable, impossible to stop them now.
And Firouzja is now playing with seconds left on his clock to save this game, to save this match. It's looking hopeless for the young Frenchman.
Yeah, you can tell body language. We sometimes read into it, sometimes we have to ignore it. But here, Firouzja knows that no chance. 12 seconds. It's just been one of those games, one of those days.
What's gone wrong for him today? Is it his own fault, so to speak, or is it just Arjun who's been crushing it today?
Arjun's been on fire.
Yeah.
He's been tactically alert. He's played great prophylactic move, stopping his opponent's activity. He's shown great technique. Even this one, just in 3 moves, getting a winning position, the A-pawn marching down the board, all those ideas with the queen that we saw in the earlier games. Just brilliant play from start to finish. He was never in the back foot. He was never worse throughout the match. So a very controlled win here by Arjun.
And Robert, I can see how impressed you are on your face by these moves from Erigaisi.
I mean, every move has a purpose in his game right now. He just traded rooks, and you're often told, well, if you have fewer rooks, maybe you shouldn't trade. He's saying these passed pawns are storming up the board. I do not want to give my opponent any counterplay. So if the white rook that's on C1 could jump over the knight, maybe there would be some chances to land a few checks and give an opportunity to stop the pawns, but not from the front. It seems that if you just bring one of your knights, either one, back to the E4 square with check, then the pawns are running by themselves. It's as clear-cut as it gets. Arjun Erigaisi, every move in this game has felt extremely accurate.
Yeah, you can start advancing, I think, even either of them at this point, but yeah, these pawns aren't going to be stopped anytime soon.
I'm surprised at how easy Arjun made this one look.
Mm-hmm. And again, logical moves will wrap up the point. Like you say, it's rare at the top levels of chess to play kind of such a smooth game, not allow your opponent any counterplay. In 6 seconds for Firouzja, we're expecting one of these knights to land with a check. I'm not sure which one's better. They both look very strong, to be honest. But Arjun, he's doing the right thing. He's sitting on his hands, not rushing. He knows this is the critical moment. He knows he's winning. Just 1 or 2 accurate moves, and he'll reach that finishing line. Now he's in calculation mode. He's trying to figure out which knight to give the check with and then which pawn to push. So, yeah, a matter of time, but Erigaisi has 3 minutes. That should be sufficient to calculate his way to that win.
6 seconds, however, for Alireza Firouzja. That is probably not enough to save this game.
What a move.
Again!
Again. He's seen everything, and we have to show the justification here. He's actually giving up his knight because the black pawns are just too strong. And let's jump in. Actually, well, we're going to see it on the board. This pawn is about to promote. The white rook has to stop it, and the other pawn joins. One of them is going to become a queen, and game over. 3-0.
It's game over. Arjun Erigaisi takes the match. He goes through to the winners' semi-finals, where he will face Magnus Carlsen, also winning his match today. Congratulations, Magnus.
Thank you.
What has today been like? A crushing start to the Champions Chess Tour season.
Yeah, it was all right. I sort of messed up the opening in the second game, but apart from that, it went quite all right.
And you've said before that beating someone once isn't revenge. You did lose to Sarana in the Blitz World Championship. Do you feel like you got some revenge beating him in a crushing style today?
I didn't think about that. I mean, I ended up winning the World Blitz after all, so that's fine.
And we know you're playing from Canada, actually quite early in the morning. So what has that been like to wake up early and start playing the Champions Chess Tour?
No, it's not that bad. I mean, we started at 11 here, and I haven't been here long enough to sort of get 100% on off European time, so that's okay.
Did you get some help from the chess bras actually in preparing for the games?
Well, I mean, getting things set up and such, but theoretical preparation was sorely lacking, unfortunately.
Okay, got it. Now, Magnus, we can see you guys working together here. You do stay on the winners bracket. We know you were, well, looking forward to testing out this double elimination format. So how happy are you that you get to stay on the winners bracket now?
Yeah, obviously, that's good, and I intend to do it just as long as I can. So yeah, tomorrow's match will not be easy either, but I'll do my best.
And Magnus, you're a huge sports fan. What do you think of the jersey on the wall behind you and the other sports memorabilia sitting around there?
Yeah, it's nice. I don't know as much as I should about hockey though, so I'll have to learn.
And tomorrow, Magnus, winners semi-finals against Arjun Erigaisi, someone you played so much last season on the Champions Chess Tour. What's going to be your plan against Arjun?
I haven't really thought about it. I'll take him one match at a time, and I thought it was probably more likely that I'll play Alireza instead. But yeah, Arjun is very strong at his best, as he showed today. So both easy.
Yep. And finally, new format with the clocks as well, only 3 seconds increment. How did you like it?
It's a little bit unusual, especially when you get to time scrambles, and like I did in the second game, I was like a little bit. It was a bit unusual for me that I wasn't actually able to think much. I just had to play on instinct there. So I think it will take a little bit of time getting used to it, being more of a sort of a pure blitz finish than I'm used to. It's fine.
All right. Well, Magnus, big congratulations on a great start to the season, and best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Magnus Carlsen is one of several players already ready for the winners semi-finals. He's going to play Arjun Erigaisi, and we have to get caught up on results. We do know Arjun Erigaisi has won his match against Furusha and Hikaru Nakamura. A draw in game 3 means he is also ready for winners semi-finals. Wesley So, I didn't see. Wesley So and Mamedov.
Wesley So won, surprisingly, actually.
What happened there?
He turned it around. He was dead lost. It looked like he could barely move a piece at some point. Mamedov in full control, but Mamedov cashed it in at the wrong time, went into an equal endgame and got outmaneuvered. Wesley was too strong in the latter stages of that game.
So Wesley So is in the lead heading into a game 4 in that one. Do you now hold him as a favorite to win that match before it even goes to Armageddon?
I don't think that anybody is envious of the task of beating Wesley So. He's one of the most solid players on the planet, so good luck to Rauf Mamedov, because Wesley does not relinquish the lead very often.
Yeah. And we have 3 matches finished now, Tanya. I mean, how surprised are you that 3 players have been actually able to crush their opposition today?
I think it's a surprising result for sure. Sarana going down in just 3 games. Hikaru winning in 3 games, I think it's still believable. And then Arjun, that has been the most impressive for me in this one. Magnus mentioned himself that he was actually expecting to play Alireza in the next one.
Yeah. Incredible. David, we didn't get to follow Wesley So's 3rd game here, which was a win. Can we take a look at it?
Yep, let's try and jump in at the crucial moments. And it was around here that Mamedov took control. He spotted this cool tactic, I must say, after the pawn to g5. He grabbed a pawn on b2. Black is material down. He's the exchange down, rook for bishop. But this bishop is now poisoned. If the white queen takes it, then suddenly the black pawn pushes, and 2 threats, unstoppable threats. 1, making a new queen, but also checkmate on the g2 square. Later, he just got outmaneuvered simply, Mamedov. He cashed in at the wrong moment, and in this endgame, knight versus bishop, Wesley survived to this point, and it was eventually the h-pawn that won him the game. The black king moved, the h-pawn started rolling, and Mamedov panicked. He couldn't deal with its advance. So Wesley turning it around, but with a bit of luck on his side.
Looking for a new way to learn chess? Meet Dr. Wolf, the ideal chess coach and companion. Play against Dr. Wolf as he explains everything step by step, points out strategic ideas, and alerts you to your mistakes. Train with him and go over your past mistakes until you master them. Choose from over 35 lessons created for all skill levels. No matter your level, everyone could use a coach. Download Learn Chess with Dr. Wolf for Android or iOS devices today.
So much action already today. 3 matches finished after only 3 games. We're going to take a look at everything that has been happening. But if you're not a subscriber, here's the Twitch break. I would not have bet that, Jovanka, that 3 matches would have been finished after 3 games. Some dominant chess that we've seen already today.
Yeah, it has been incredible. I mean, what an emotional roller coaster, I have to say. And wow, wow. It's just unbelievable. I mean, the way that Magnus, Hikaru just outclassed their opponents was just something else.
Yeah. And who has impressed you the most so far?
I think it has to be Hikaru. Hikaru actually just completely calmly neutralized Gukesh. Gukesh really came at him quite hard. And Hikaru just made it look so easy. You know, he just said, okay, fine, you're going to come for me and my king. That's not a problem. I'm simply going to repel it and just win material.
Yeah.
Win it in the endgame.
And then also Arjun Erigaisi winning 3 games against the super strong Alireza Firouzja. He now goes through to face Magnus Carlsen in the winners semi-finals tomorrow. What kind of confidence is Arjun bringing to that match tomorrow?
It feels like Arjun is just benefiting from all the luck. You know, in this match, it did really resemble that Firouzja just imploded in those critical moments. And when you have a match that feels so easy, you're just going to feel like your hopes are just in the ascendant.
Yeah. Wow, what a day. And it's not finished, you guys, because one match is yet to be decided. Wesley So against Rauf Mamedov. Game 4 is coming up very shortly. Here we go, game 2, you guys.
Wow, peace sacrifice. And Tanya, your first instinct was what? He's given up a bishop, his London bishop.
Big choice from Arjun Erigaisi tonight.
Look the bar.
He's attacked the diagonal. This check can be blocked by Black's bishop. Firouzja leaning back though, and it's over.
And here we go, game 3.
I like this move, queen to b5. He's eyeing that d7 square from where he can hit the knight on e7. The b7 pawn is soft. So Gukesh here really creating his chances.
Gukesh, he is knocked down to the losers bracket for tomorrow. Hikaru Nakamura stays on the winners bracket together with Magnus Carlsen and Arjun Erigaisi. But who will Hikaru face tomorrow in the winners semi-finals? It's either going to be Wesley So or Rauf Mamedov. And if it's going to be Mamedov, he will have to win game 4. Wesley So is up by 1 point. And with a draw, Wesley So goes through to the winner's bracket. So what is it about for Rauf Mamedov now, Tanya?
Wesley So is one of the hardest players to beat in the chess world. When the guy needs just a draw, that task becomes Herculean.
Yeah.
It's just hard to imagine. He's so clinical with these things. Once he takes a lead in a match, he knows his task is cut. He doesn't want to create a mess on the board. He keeps everything under control. This is going to be a tough one for Rauf.
Yeah. Ranked as number 102 in the world in classical chess. How big of a surprise is it actually that Rauf Mamedov is even here in the first division?
I think for those who have been following chess for a long time, they're not surprised because Rauf Mamedov is insanely talented, especially at quicker time controls. He knows his theory well, he plays very quickly, and he is tough. As we just saw in that game, he was better against Wesley So in game 3. He just slipped at a critical moment.
Yeah. And what's it going to be about for him now? He's going to have to win this game to take it to an Armageddon. What do you expect from the game, David?
It's going to be tough. It does depend on the opening. Mamedov is very, very dangerous with the white pieces, as Robert says. He knows his openings inside out. He needs to catch Wesley off guard, take him out of his comfort zone as early as possible. If Wesley gets a solid structure, a solid position, maybe a simplified position, like an endgame, then I think there won't be any chance. So Mamedov, he needs to keep it complicated and go on the attack. He's done it before. He did knock out Nepomniachtchi from the play-ins.
And let's take a look at the bracket. 3 matches in the quarterfinals have finished. 1 match is yet to be decided. And the winners from the quarterfinals go through to the winners semifinals, while the losers, they are not knocked out. They are only knocked down to the losers bracket to play losers round 1 tomorrow. We do know it's going to be Alexei Sarana against Alireza Firouzja in one of those matches, and it's going to be Gukesh against either Wesley So or Mamedov. And Mamedov, he has to win now, game 4. It looks like right now we will see Hikaru Nakamura against Wesley So in the winners semi-finals tomorrow, and that's a prestigious one, must be for any American.
And it's a rematch of the Chess.com Global Championship semifinals, where Wesley So took down Hikaru Nakamura to make it to the final and eventually to win it over Neil Sarana. So you know, speaking of revenge, Hikaru Nakamura has that on his mind.
I mean, already on day 2, we can get the matchup Wesley So against Hikaru Nakamura. That would be incredible.
Yeah, and they've got so much respect for each other, both, of course, in the world's elite for many, many years now. They've played each other in the Global Chess Championship. They played each other in one of the Grand Prix finals last year, FIDE Grand Prix. And yeah, that one is too tough to call. Both of them incredibly hard to beat, and both of them super fast.
Yep.
So that would be exciting. But first, Wesley needs to overcome Rauf Mamedov.
That is exactly what he needs to do. A draw in this game with the black pieces means Wesley So stays on the winner's bracket. It's must win for Rauf Mamedov, but he does have the white pieces. And here we go.
And before we can predict the opening, before Kai can get it right again, it's 1e4. And Wesley, he's not going to back down from his normal repertoire. His standard repertoire, his default setting is rock solid anyway. And I expect to see maybe the Berlin defense, if given the opportunity, one of the hardest nuts to crack in terms of chess openings. What will Mamedov go for now? It's strange to pause on move 3, I've got to say. Either you bring your bishop out, which is what nearly all top players do nowadays, or you have maybe a sideline up your sleeve. But you've got to surprise Wesley. You've got to do it now.
And there are some adventurous lines in the Scotch. The problem is Wesley So plays the Scotch opening from the white side. So you're not going to catch him off guard there. We get the Italian. A slower start, but maybe there will be some tricks up Rauf Mamedov's sleeve.
Yeah, at least with the Italian game, we do often see all of the pieces still on the board at move 15, move 20, and even beyond that. So going for maximum tension here, Rauf Mamedov. And it is one of the main lines of the Italian game. It will just slow down, I expect, go to a maneuvering phase. Tanya, who do you think this is going to favour?
I completely understand the decision to go for the Italian. The Spanish would be a bad idea because it would allow the Berlin, as you mentioned. Scotch, not a great opening against Wesley. With the Italian, the reason that Rauf is taking time in the opening is that you have to kind of decide your own setup, how you want to place your pieces. It's all about the little pawn moves. Do you commit c3? Do you go short castle? Do you first bring out your knight to d2? What do you do with the a pawn? And all that will determine the kind of middle game that Rauf will get. All he wants to do is to make sure that he has flexibility. That is why he's chosen the move c3, always eyeing that center break on d4. He wants to first, of course, finish his development. And I'm expecting a developing move right now, bringing out the knight or going short castle. I like this approach by Rauf in a win-on-demand situation.
Yep. The Italian game, it wasn't in fashion up until maybe the mid-2010s, and suddenly everyone was playing it. Suddenly everyone was beating me with it. And yeah, it tends to be a good opening in these must-win types of situations. However, of course, Wesley So vastly experienced both with white and with black in this opening. And Mamedov doesn't look like he's enjoying it on the camera, I've got to say. Doesn't look too optimistic about his chances. He still played very logical moves. Black now castling. White is super flexible. You can castle yourself. You can delay that if you want to maybe maneuver your pieces a bit further. But either way, he's got to believe in his chances in this game. Otherwise, he won't get a look in.
One of the most unpleasant things in the chess world is to play for a win against an opponent like Wesley So. He's just so hard to beat, so well prepared. Give him one opportunity, he takes it and doesn't give you a chance. He keeps everything under control. And I like that white hasn't committed a short castle move. So now Rauf is really thinking, does he want to try to create something on the king side now that black has gone short castle himself? Or will he play a slower Italian with the ideas, the thematic ideas of transferring the knight to the king side to g3?
Yeah. And that's one idea. There's a bunch of options you can go for, while Rauf has another slightly confusing long think here. This is the one that you're recommending here, Tanya. It can happen now or on the next moves. For example, if you wait, you can wait maybe by dropping your bishop back or by pushing a pawn. You could also try and tempt black to play a useful looking move, such as this one, just stopping any later bishop pin along this diagonal. But now suddenly white could use this pawn as a hook and perhaps try to start attacking. And look at what Rauf has done. He's hoping for a slip like this from Wesley. Of course, it won't happen. Wesley's too experienced. He knows all of the ins and outs of all of these plans for both sides. But Rauf drops his bishop back, saying, OK, you commit first. You show me your hand, you show me your plan, and then I'll decide where to put my pieces. If you push this pawn forward, I might well start blasting open the king side and try to castle with my king on the opposite flank later. If you don't commit to that move, at least I'll know what setup you're going for, what you intend to do. So interesting kind of mind games here, and those are the questions that Ralph especially is asking himself right now.
And Wesley is deliberating here because he has many attractive moves. He can just bring his light square bishop out to e6, offer a trade of pieces. He does just that as soon as I mentioned it. He could have first slid his rook over to protect that square, but he decides, let's go for the trade. If white has just spent a turn going bishop back to b3, now bishop takes e6, it seems like you're a tempo down from the white side, so there's no fear for black opening up that f-file. Instead, Ralph castles, but I just don't feel this is the type of position he wanted. He's in must-win territory, and I truly believe that Wesley So may be the single worst opponent to play when you need to win. Magnus Carlsen needed to beat him in classical chess in Vaikonze. He hit Magnus of the white pieces, couldn't do it. Wesley was super solid, so I just think that Wesley, he's too precise, and he does not play with any risk.
Yeah, and this position looks like a dream for black if we talk about openings and their outcomes. Now you can just drop your bishop back. This bishop is attacked, and at some point later you can aim to break forward in the center. It feels like black has equalized effortlessly. Light squared bishops have left the board, and every piece trade will guide Wesley towards safety, at least for black. And yeah, I think it's not, unfortunately, been the most successful of Italian games for Ralph, but can he keep the tension? Can he keep the winning chances? I don't think I want to face Wesley in a must-win situation. I definitely don't want to face him in this position either, because it looks right up his alley. It looks like he's well in his comfort zone.
And once that bishop falls back, Wesley's already threatening to advance the a-pawn to attack the white knight on b3. So white will again have to spend another tempo stopping that idea, because if black is able to advance further on the queen side, then you get more space with the pawn jumping forward. So once I think bishop to b6 happens, white will have to make the move a4, giving black the opportunity to make that central break that we've been talking about with d5.
Yeah, and it's surprising neither side took time out to go for either of those plans. Instead, Wesley just takes time now to cover this square for the white bishop. You don't allow any pin, you don't allow any uncomfortable tension there. Of course, white can't propel his pawns forward and go to try and open lines against this hook, because white's king has finally committed to the king side, and he's arguing that a knight takes bishop type of move will actually favor black, because suddenly a semi-open file, a backward pawn to target, if the black rooks can line up against it, it might well just drop off the board later. Interesting decision, and just safety first approach again from Wesley. So classy, just preventing any glimpse, any hint of activity for white's bishop.
And we see the pieces swapped off, though. I think that gives at least Ralph something to consider, that in the long term he has the bishop against a knight. The pawn on c5, not really a weakness. I actually consider it a strength, because white will never be able to push that d3 pawn up to d4. So what black will likely do is just double or triple along the d-file, bring the rooks to the party, and start putting pressure on that square. So I don't think that immediately white has any progress, at least not easy to make. But down the road, if white also doubles the rooks behind that pawn, maybe there are some eventual breaks, maneuvering of the pieces that can give Ralph some hope. So it's not an advantage, certainly not, but it's at least something to hope for.
Yeah, it's some imbalance, and that's the most you can hope for when you're trying to win a game. You just change the type of pieces you have, change the pawn structure slightly, and hope that long-term that pays off. But yeah, for now, it's very much a slow maneuvering game while these players try to figure out their strategies. And first of all, Wesley has to defend that pawn on c5. Probably with a pawn, maybe with his queen.
Oh.
But,
wow.
Robert, what a move.
What a move. I love it. He's just breaking open the center, targeting that d3 pawn, and says, come and take my c4 pawn. Not only do you double up your own pawns, but watch out for that pawn in the center. Notice how the e4 pawn gets weak, and black will be able to snap that up with his own knight. I love this move. It solves the problem of having the double pawns for black, and now the ball's in white's court, and not pleasant choices to be made here for white.
Yeah, it's a dilemma already for Ralph. Either you capture this pawn, as we were pointing out there, and black now has a 4 versus 3 majority on the king side in terms of pawns. Meanwhile, white's double pawns don't make a great impression here. Or the sad alternative would be, well, what is the alternative?
It's hard to come up with a move.
Maybe to drop the knight back, allowing a symmetrical pawn structure. You have an issue of this pawn. I guess you could defend it and then pick up this pawn next for white, but very maximum here. You just get symmetrical pawn structure and dead equality. And that's being optimistic, I'm going to say.
That's what happens when you make one careless move against a superstar like Wesley So. The move Bishop E3, such a natural developing move, attacking the pawn that was on C5. It seems at first he should have brought his queen up to the E2 square. That way C4 isn't a threat. Then developed his bishop, then connected his rooks. And that would have given him much more to play for. But look at Wesley. He does not even pause for a second. He swaps the queens off, and all he needs is the draw. He might even be the side for choice in this endgame with the healthier pawn structure. It's going to be a 4-on-3 majority on the king side if we cut the board in half. And for white, that 4-on-3 majority, you got double pawns. You're not going to be able to create a pass pawn. This is just great for Wesley So.
Yeah, I just love how he instantly hoovers off the queens. I think most of us would be reluctant to give away and cede the d-file, but he doesn't care. He knows that the rook can infiltrate. It's just one move, and soon the rook will be evicted from the black half. Just really calm, eliminating all the pieces, eliminating all the danger. Just classic Wesley So.
This is amazing stuff. I mean, this queen trade, he doesn't want to give any chance to his opponent. The reason he decided to take on d1 and then on e4 is that if you capture the pawn on e4, if you just back up one move and take on e4 instead, it allows this sliver of hope for white with the move queen d5, centralizing the queen, putting pressure on black, and if you take that queen, well, it's a pawn structure that you will suffer in the endgame. But Wesley doesn't want to go through any of that, trades the queens, just again, very clinical play when he needs a draw.
Yeah, very clinical play. And we see here Rauf Mamedov just shuffle his rook to the side. It's looking very, very good, very solid for Wesley. And a bunch of moves here. You can kind of protect your pawn, your knight indirectly. You can just jump back with the knight if you're scared of it being attacked in the next few moves. You could even, if you're feeling ambitious, push this pawn forward. I'm not sure how much risk Wesley So will take now. But yeah, it does feel like he's a big favourite to make the draw he needs.
And I do see some questions in the awesome Twitch chat. If you are watching on the chess.com channel on Twitch, some people asking if this is the last game of today. And it is. If Wesley So wins this game or it is a draw, then this is actually the last game of today. But the action continues tomorrow with winners, semifinals, and losers, round one. And Rauf Mamedov, he did lose game 3 to Wesley So. And he was very upset afterwards. Look at that.
And this was his chance. This game was his chance.
Yeah, because he had winning chances as well in this game.
Yeah, it's more than just winning chances. It's he knows he had it in the bag, and it's so hard to recover. It's not just affecting that one game that he lost, it's affecting this game. And you can see on his body language he's not feeling too happy with himself.
Because if he were able to at least draw in game 3, he would have the white pieces here in game 4. That would send it potentially to Armageddon. And people can't forget that in the Chess.com Global Championship, Neil Sarana made it to the final when he lost and became runner-up to Wesley So. But he almost lost in round 1 to Rauf Mamedov. This is not someone who just appeared on the scene. This is somebody who's been around the block. He's Reckham Rauf, and he knows that if he's playing his best chess, he can take down Wesley So in a match. So that is why he was so upset. He had his chance. He was outplaying Wesley. In fact, throughout the match, I don't think he's really been worse, except for that one endgame that David was highlighting where the H-pawn started to run.
Yeah. Very close.
And it's always more heartbreaking when you know you were on the brink of victory. If you get outclassed, if you get outplayed, then you kind of just accept it. And that can happen against someone as strong as Wesley So. But he's had his opportunity, massive opportunity, and now he's got to do it all over again. Yeah. And, OK, he's played some decent moves. I quite like what white has done in terms of pawn structure on the king side. He's pushed his G-pawn forward. Normally, a dark square bishop is well complemented by pawns on light squares, but still an uphill struggle to create weaknesses. Black's very solid. And, a trade of rooks. Interesting decision. Giving away the d-file this time. And it's all to push his pawn forward. Talked about Reckham Rauf. He's trying to wreck the pawn structure. Sorry.
Getting the feeling that Rauf is over-pushing right now. It almost feels like he's going a little bit on tilt here. And not taking that much time, making all these very strong, rash decisions of pushing the pawn, trading the rooks on the d-file. I think when we saw him that upset on the screen, it's also because for the players who are making that debut in the Champions Chess Tour, it's really an opportunity that they've never had before. And they've been able to do that this time because of the new format, which allows Grandmasters to qualify and play in the tour. So it definitely means a lot. And to have that winning opportunity against a player like Wesley, it can be really frustrating because you know if you have to win on demand against him, just how hard it will be. Right now, what we're seeing by Ralph, these moves, advancing the pawn, g4, g5, to me, it seems more on tilt and more rash than an actual try for a win.
Yeah, it feels like minimum reward, but quite a lot of risk involved. But then again, a draw is the same as a loss for him. So he's just trying to confuse Wesley, create some chances. You can't just sit there and beat Wesley with a very stable pawn structure. Instead, he's at least trying to change, again, the dynamics of the position, imbalance things slightly. And maybe we can jump in, because Wesley has paused. I thought his move was automatic. I wouldn't actually consider anything else here for black other than capturing this g-pawn, this straggler in the black camp. But what else could he be thinking about? Ralph's idea, we should mention, after pawn takes pawn, is to recapture with the bishop. And again, a bit of an annoying pin, but mostly it's all about pressure on this e5 pawn. And Wesley, what else could he be considering here? Why has he stopped for the last couple of minutes?
I think it's exactly that. He is trying to calculate a little bit ahead to see how he wants to actually respond to that attack on the e5 pawn. It's not very pleasant to actually sidestep with your rook to the closed file, the closed e file, to defend your own pawn, and then allow white's rook to step forward. So not wanting that, he decides to take another decision. David, he doesn't want to allow white to put pressure on the e file. He falls back with the knight on h7. That's slightly surprising to me.
I'm trying to figure out, what's the idea? Is this not a pawn sacrifice by Wesley? So after pawn takes pawn, this pawn's defended by his bishop.
He answers your question.
We're all looking confused. Okay, Robert.
I think I understand it. So even though objectively it seems it was a mistake, if we just go back, if he had indeed captured on g5, and that rook e8 was the follow-up after bishop takes pawn, and after bishop takes f6, g takes f6, we see the evaluation bar. If you get to this position on the board, it says, it's level, not a big deal. But there is this outside pass pawn, this h pawn that black needs to stop. So in certain endgames with pieces getting traded, white may just be winning. So what Wesley is likely relying on, and what he did in the game, is he sacrificed the pawn, but said, that pawn, I'm likely going to be able to corral it and win it later, so let me just keep the remaining pawn structure healthy for black and then proceed from there. I think that it was a mistake. The other line did not look particularly scary, but at least I understand what Wesley was thinking in doing this, and he may just try to create a fortress, push his pawn up to f6, bring his king out to f7, and maybe when the time is right, he can start pushing his pawns on the king's side and say that white is stuck in his tracks, no more progress to be had.
Something like this, and as you say, Robert, maybe bring the knight round. Eventually, this pawn, you can go for it with your king, with your rook, maybe. It's not going anywhere for now, and black is still super solid, but being a pawn down, you want to avoid it if you can in an endgame. Very surprising. We said that Wesley, he's so solid, but yeah, here he's making a bit of a risky decision, and the evaluation bar does react. I'm not sure whether it's just because white is a pawn up, so the evaluation bar says, okay, slightly better for white right now. But wow, what a move by Ralph Mamedov. He's going for it on the other flank as well. This could be potentially very strong and a bit of a shock to Wesley. He's played b4, and this pawn is covered twice, this square, by black's pieces. For example, after a recapture, black can even take with his knight. But suddenly, white has very aggressive moves. Firstly, knight takes pawn is an idea. The rook could also swing across. I'm not sure which one is stronger out of those two. But Ralph, he's trying to give up a pawn to get a pawn back. And the more lines that become open, the more that will favour white's bishop and rook. So Wesley wants none of that. He just simply sets up that solid pawn wall in the centre. And Ralph, I think he's going to start stepping forward. Why not? This is where he has the majority. 4 versus 3, it's going to be hard to create a pass pawn here, but at least he's kicking away the black pieces. Interesting stuff.
This is fantastic play by Ralph to try to create his chances. And after f6, he has the option to actually slide with his rook already to the b file. Now that the e pawn is supported, you defend your own pawn, and you want to try to push your pawns and gain space on the queen side. And with that h pawn still alive, it looks like all the risk that he was going for has paid off.
Yeah. I like it. I'm starting to like it a lot for white. This pawn does tie down a whole knight after all. And, OK, he's just solidified his pawn structure with his own pawn. Looks like a bit of a kind of hesitant move, a bit of an indecisive move. But at least he has enough imbalance now to have a chance of winning this game.
What do you think right now, Robert? Chances we will see Armageddon on this very first day of the Champions Chess Tour 2023?
Pretty good chances. I think that this decision was one that Wesley might kick himself for. I understand it. I can get behind it to some extent because he thinks he has a fortress, an impenetrable setup. He may be down one pawn, but good luck to getting to any of the others. But as we've been highlighting, there are issues on the queen side. White does have an extra pawn on that side of the board, and black isn't just going to win this pawn on h6. That's a passer that's going to remain queen, at the very least tied down some of Black's forces to it. So I do think that this game will go on for quite a while, and that's good news for Ralph and his winning chances.
Yeah, it's almost as if Wesley was in a must-win situation, taking that decision, giving up a pawn. Very, very strange stuff. And, OK, he's pushed his pawn to g5, so cutting the coordination between White's bishop and that passed pawn on h6. Black has a clear plan now. He's simply going to advance the Black king towards that lone pawn on h6. But, again, White has two moves. White has at least two moves, maybe, while that plan happens. How can he best take advantage of the time that Wesley's given him? I'm still looking for ways to push on the queen side. It looked like Ralph was reluctant to do that on the last few moves. White's knight, White's bishop, a bit stuck. They need to improve. Tanya, do you see any plans here for White? I'm trying to work out if there's any way forward, any concrete moves here for Ralph.
One thing's for sure, right? You've got to try and keep that h6 pawn alive for as long as you can. And the one thing that White needs to do to make that happen is to push the other h pawn. Once you go h4, you break this g5 pawn, which is stopping the connection between the bishop on e3 and the pawn on h6. So it can really stay on the board for a long time, distracting Black's pieces. And once that happens, you can try to expand on the queen side. I like the idea, and I like the move b5, kicking that Black knight away, and then advancing the c pawn further down the board, creating a second weakness on the queen side.
Yeah, a second avenue for attack potentially. I'm also looking at White's knight. In this variation you mentioned, after it pushes forward, the black pawn will attack it anyway. So I'm not sure whether we flick in this move and then perhaps go here to attack this black pawn, or perhaps go towards the center. But ideally, we want to land the knight in this, on this beautiful post on e4, but it might get stopped by Black's pawn advance. So I'm wondering, do you go for it now in the current position? Here, at least it feels looser for Black to push this pawn forward to prevent White's knight getting in. It could start hopping around some really sweet, juicy squares, and he does go for this very natural move. That knight was not doing too much, and OK, he first flicks in h4 and g4, so he has opened up, once again, the protection of this pawn. Interesting stuff. I'm starting to like his chances a lot.
It's getting double-edged, but that's what you need if you're playing for a win. All of a sudden, Black is pushing those pawns forward. The f-pawn may go up the board as well. And don't be surprised if Black starts creating threats. That rook can slam down in the d3 square at some moment. So White needs to act without caution. I mean, you need to play quickly, because if you just start making slow moves, like bring your king to the side to f1, things of that nature, it seems like Black will be the first to attack. The pawn h6, protected. It's safe for now, but it's not doing anything. It's blockaded. So I think that Black is ready to strike.
Yeah, Black is ready to strike, and Wesley, I think both sides just need to play quickly now. They both need to throw caution to the wind and just go for it. Wesley can't just think of locking this down with a fortress. That doesn't exist anymore. Long term, White is still doing extremely well. So he needs to push pawns, maybe land that Black rook in the heart of White's camp. And Ralph there shaking his head, kind of looking up. It's as if he's still dwelling in the past. He's still remembering that missed opportunity in Game 3. He needs to focus now, because he's played very well. He's created chances out of nothing, seemingly. And it's actually Wesley who needs to come up with answers in this exact moment.
And that's one of the hardest things to do as a chess player, is to forget what has just happened, especially when you know that you had a big opportunity and you let that slip. To forget that, to leave that behind and focus on what's in front of you is definitely a big challenge. And in this format, it doesn't get any easier. So we see a decision to trade on b4. The big question to my mind here is, Robert, David, what is White's idea if Black does go f5? I want to trap that bishop on e3. I want to go f4. Your knight on d2 is hanging. How are you responding to f5?
Yeah, Wesley hasn't gone for it yet. He's holding back. It feels as if he's still trying to play with the break on. But you're right, Tanya, this is on tap anytime you want it. For example, if White does mess around with a seemingly kind of useful move but not doing too much, then this is definitely going to be one idea for Black. The knight suddenly has to move just to create some squares for the bishop, perhaps, to retreat. But this is really kind of not what you want to see. You don't want to start pushing pieces back. So instead, Ralph continues with the plan he initiated a couple of moves ago, landing his knight on e4, and Wesley immediately lands his own knight on this very nice square, hinting at simply grabbing pawns back.
We see the issue with what Ralph did. He brought his knight to d2. He centralized his knight. How could you possibly complain about that decision? But when black played the move pawn g5 to g4, David, your instinct, I think, was correct to drop the knight towards the rim to attack that pawn and induce the pawn up to f5. Because if that black pawn were already on f5, the knight couldn't hop there. What's that knight doing? It's attacking not just the bishop on e3, but the pawn on h4 and the pawn on h6, all at the same time. Black can bring the king up to f7 as well. The rook can still go up to d3. White is up a pawn, but it's doubled pawns on the c file, not making progress just yet. I think Wesley makes it look easy sometimes. He made probably an objective mistake by giving up a pawn, but practically speaking, it's looked like he's had no issues since then.
Yeah, if we think about simple positions or endgames or certain positions where there are simple plans, Wesley, I think he's number one in the world. Maybe with Magnus Carlsen up there too. It's just, he makes it look so straightforward, as if, how did you not see this earlier? How did you not understand this plan? He's so consistent once he finds an idea, and he's going for it now. It's very hard to hold everything together for White.
I don't see how White is actually hold on to that extra pawn. You're threatening to take on h4. You're threatening to land that knight on f3 with a devastating check. The only way that I can see White creating any play is to take advantage of the open a file, shift that rook from the center now all the way across the board, go to a1, start targeting the 7th rank, the pawns on the 7th rank. The h4 pawn is dead and gone.
Yeah, you just have to say, bye-bye, I'm going to give you a pawn back, and you have to activate those white pieces. But 2 minutes now for Ralph, 5 for Wesley. It's not looking promising in terms of a fight back anymore. Just 1 or 2 slips, and that's all Wesley needs. Well, this is looking tough. I don't envy him in this position.
And the white king is actually wide open. There are plenty of checkmating attacks. If we go for Tanya's line, if we can just show a few moves, that would lead to a forced checkmating sequence. Let's say the rook slides to a1, the black knight takes on h4, the rook goes up to a7. Great, you're threatening those pawns. But in comes the rook to d1 with check. The king has only 1 safe square on h2 because the knight covers g2. The knight hops into f3 with check. And no matter where the king goes, up to g3 or over to g2, rook g1 is check and mate. So remember this configuration. With a knight on f3 defended by a pawn, once the rook slides in, it is going to be a mate against the white king. So I think that Wesley has this all under control.
Yeah, it's looking like black's pieces, they're just coordinating so well right now. It looks odd in a way because this knight is paralyzed, it's stuck, just blockading a pawn. But the rest of black's pieces, the rest of the structure is perfect. And wow, we're all reacting here in the studio because Ralph is maybe out of desperation, sacrificed a piece.
Whoa.
He's given up his knight just for a couple of pawns. And wow, okay, he's created a pin. This surely can't work.
But that's a one-move pin. You just sidestep it, defend your knight on f6, go rook to f8, and how does white continue there?
I guess there's another pawn up for grabs. This pawn can also be captured. He's just gambling here, Ralph. He knows he's in a must-win situation, and he's saying, okay, I don't care about pieces, but I guess this pawn will be taken, and the black knight steps back, defending its fellow here. It's hard to believe, I've got to say, that white has enough for the piece. But you do have 3 pawns, even if they are ugly double pawns.
And it gives you chances, because a lot of the other variations, you may not lose the game, but you're certainly not going to win. This gives Wesley some room to go wrong, and that's all you can ask for at this stage of the game. So objectively, you see the evaluation bar saying, come on, what is that? But from Ralph Mamedov, a draw equals a loss. You might as well go down swinging.
Yeah, I've got to say, the more I look at it, the more I like it. He's definitely taking chances, but that's the only way you win games at the top level. You have to take big risks. And from a human point of view, Wesley will no longer feel in control. He's suddenly on the defensive and he has to hold things together. He goes for Tanya's move, defending his knight here. But now another pawn will disappear. There we go. Another pawn drops. And suddenly, black still on the back foot. I still believe Wesley's defensive resources are more than sufficient here. But yeah, from a human point of view, a good practical decision from Ralph.
If they switch the times, then Ralph would have a legitimate chance. But unfortunately for him, it is Wesley up 3 minutes on the clock. So worst position, time management not there for you. So Wesley does have things under control. He is so strong in positions just like this.
Yep. And at least his job is easier now, Wesley, just pure defense. He's done the hard work. He's material up with this black knight. Extra black knight. But Ralph, he's going for all the pawns. This is very greedy, I've got to say. But will the greed pay off? Black's knights, once they coordinate, will actually form quite a devastating attacking threat against the white king. And actually similar patterns to the one Robert pointed out earlier might occur on the board later if white gets greedy and goes with his rook to capture that black g-pawn. in the near future. First, Ralph just advancing and trying to improve to the maximum, and then he'll go pawn hunting.
They are fighting to save a spot on the winner's bracket to face Hikaru Nakamura in the winner's semifinals tomorrow. The loser will be knocked down to the loser's bracket in this double elimination format to face Gukesh in the losers round 1 tomorrow. Now, you guys at home are fighting to win an Airthings device. Keep sharing your selfies on Twitter using the hashtag ChessChamps, preferably in landscape mode. We want to know where in the world you are following the action, where you are watching the chess, who you're watching it with, and the most creative selfie will get a signed Airthings device. Magnus Carlsen has signed some of these devices, and we will send one of them home to a lucky viewer.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the pride and joy of White's position has disappeared. That passed H-pawn, the front one, the H6 pawn, it's disappeared. Not only that, but another set of pieces have been traded off. So it is currently Black having a knight, White having 3 pawns in return, material equality. But the quality is not there, unfortunately. That Black knight, once it enters the game, should decide things in Black's favour.
And it's happening on the next move. You can already start bringing up the knight to e5 and putting pressure on the f2 weakness by jumping onto d3. Things are looking super bleak, and that sacrifice that we saw, the practical chance that we saw by Ralph, it was a measure of desperate times, call for desperate measures, and everything. I think the knight jump by Wesley to f5 is really what sealed the deal in this game.
Yeah, he's made some very impressive knight jumps in this one, Wesley, and I'm surprised he's hesitating. I've got to say, maybe he's just looking for the most clinical way to kill off this game. He could just jump in, improve his knights even further. He can maybe just improve the Black rook, but no, he goes for that White H-pawn with his king. He's already won 1 pawn with his king. Why not go for a second H-pawn? And yeah, it's holding things together now for Ralph. Maybe some drawing chances to eliminate those 2 remaining Black pawns. If you get rid of those, rook and knight versus rook is a technically drawn endgame, but at the moment it feels like a distant dream, and even a draw, remember, not enough for him to stay in this match. And Wesley locks things down on the queen side.
Locks things down, and I feel like his camera is locked down. Wesley hasn't moved since the start of the game.
He does that. He puts his hand over his head. He wants to focus on nothing but the board in front of him. And right now, he's showing why in the end game, you can use your king as a weapon. It doesn't just need to be defended. That king is out in the open, but it's going after White's vulnerable pawn. So great performance by Wesley So in this game. He sacrificed the pawn. It looked a little shaky, but since then, it has been nothing short of a masterclass, and the advantage is only growing.
Yeah.
He could pick up the pawn.
Yeah, he could just pick up a pawn with his king right now. I don't think there's any mating ideas. That Black king is safe enough. I was going to say, I saw Wesley blink, so he's not just frozen there with the camera. He finally does change his posture, but it's too late for Ralph Mamedov. He's just trying to swap off all the pawns now, Ralph, and get a draw to salvage some pride. But Wesley is going to take this match and continue in the winner's bracket. That last Black pawn, if it survives, should ensure a win. But very minimum here as Wesley. You could just trade off everything remaining on the board. And there we go. He does want to end on a high. He does defend that Black pawn. Black's king still caged, but the Black knight now will relocate, and that will be the beginning of the end.
And for Wesley, he doesn't want to necessarily win this game. Sometimes you look at a position, you look at the evaluation bar. How could Wesley make a draw? He's completely winning. If he sees a 3-time repetition, he's taking it, because all he wants is to make it through to the winner's semifinals. He wants to play Hikaru Nakamura tomorrow. So the win in this game, it doesn't mean anything to him. Let's just secure the match.
Yeah, and we saw that from Carlsen and Nakamura, that professional approach. Both of them took draws in positions of strength in the 3rd games of their match just to secure match victory. It's all about the next round. The end goal is to win the Airthings Masters. The end goal is not necessarily to win this game. So I think you're right, Robert. I've seen Wesley do it plenty of times before. Take the safe approach. And meanwhile, the Black rook starting to get to a more active square eventually. I don't really see any hope here for White to win this game. He's advancing with his king, maybe hinting at some checkmate attacks against the Black king. You've got to be slightly careful if the White rook steps up. There's a mate in 1 threat if it slides across to h7. The Black king is trapped, but you do have a move, a valuable move for Wesley to break this construction. I'm expecting the Black knight to jump back, check, hit the White king, force it away, and no more cage for the Black king.
Actually, even after the check, once the White king does step forward, White is still threatening a mate on h7. So what Black wants to do with this check is give a check on d4 as well, and keep checking that White king.
Yeah, there's always a glimmer of hope as long as you've got a checkmate threat on the board. So we did see a couple of checks. The Black Knight.
It's like, wait, that is not legal.
Don't fall into it now. It's still there, the threat. Of course, Wesley has spotted it, and the
repetition.
It begins. And I think Ralph can only avoid the draw now if he goes forward with the White King, but that would also be playing for a loss. He knows his chances of progressing in this match are gone. But now it's Wesley who doesn't go for the draw.
Surprise.
Robert, I was about to say you predicted the future, but no, he's playing on.
I'm shocked because he doesn't need to win this game. He could have just ended it with a repetition. Instead, he brings his king back, and maybe he's enjoying the fact that he has a better position because in the 3 prior games, it was really deadlocked. And in fact, in game 3, Rauf Mamedov had the advantage. So for Wesley, perhaps it's a moment to enjoy before he goes and plays Hikaru Nakamura tomorrow.
Yep. And often on the first day of tournaments, it's nice to play a long day. I know it's tiring, but you feel fully warmed up. You feel kind of back in the zone. So Wesley's kind of pushing this. The long game here, I feel, will benefit him in days to come. And meanwhile, Ralph just keeping the pressure on, keeping an eye on that black c6 pawn. Not going to help, but he's trying.
Now Wesley's down to 24 seconds. Is he regretting not just repeating the moves and wrapping up the match?
Just get out of here, take the draw and move on. Yeah, it's surprising. What's Wesley thinking about?
Okay, 14 seconds.
And only 3 seconds increment, remember.
He's
10
frozen.
seconds.
Okay, he made the move there. He does give another check. He's still on tap, that type of repetition if you kind of perpetually check that White King.
I think we're going to see it now, David. I think the knight will jump back to d4, will jump back to e6 if required, and...
Surely a draw. But no, he plays for the win again. Keeping the game going, Wesley So.
What is he doing?
This is Wesley 2.0, but it just feels so unnecessary right now.
Feels like you're playing for a loss, if anything.
And remember, if he loses, we will see Armageddon. Is there a chance Mamedov will win this game still?
Wesley still has to go completely crazy for that to happen. But he's made some strange decisions. And, OK, he's getting checked back to the edge with his king. The white pawn is advancing.
He's down to 13 seconds when he had the draw in his hands.
Yeah, now you have to calculate. Like, white's rook could slide across and offer a trade. And I think it's fine for black there, but some risk involved. And, OK, Ralph has gone for this. Suddenly, white has 2 passed pawns. Rooks are off the board. That black knight is a great blockader. Under control still for black. Should be a draw once that black pawn drops off the board. But Wesley, he played it a bit close to the line there. He took some risks, unnecessary ones.
And it's surprising from Wesley So, because he doesn't do that in events where he really needs to win. And so when he doesn't need to win, he's suddenly deciding to take that risk. But you might be right, David. It's day 1. He's just saying, let me get into tournament shape. I'm going to win this match, and I have an objectively better position. It's about to be a draw. The knight checks the king. It's going to win this pawn on d7, and then the last pawn is stopped. We see knight and king versus king. You cannot win that. It is a draw, and that means Wesley So moves on.
Wow, it is over. After 4 games, Wesley So wins this matchup. In the quarterfinals, he stays on the winner bracket to face Hikaru Nakamura tomorrow. In the winners' semifinals, Rauf Mamedov is knocked down to the losers bracket and will play Gukash tomorrow in the losers round 1. Feels so harsh to say losers about these fantastic players. But that's double elimination. Winners bracket and losers bracket.
Yeah, you can call it the lower bracket.
Yeah.
It makes you feel better. But no matter what, you lost today's match. You only have 1 match to spare. If you lose again, you are out of this tournament. So tomorrow's a new day and hopefully a new result for those who lost in today's matches.
Yeah. And Wesley So, he is one of the favorites in the tournament. He finishes off with a draw in this game, winning 1 game today to win the match. And this game... Was there any drama happening, David?
There was, and Ralph did try his best. Full credit to him for taking chances and at least attempting to throw Wesley off balance. And I want to compliment Ralph's choice here by giving up a piece. This is very difficult for any human player to give up material, but you have to take your chances. You have to create threats and give your opponent a chance to go wrong. It had already gone a bit wrong for Wesley So, but he'd recovered, he'd stabilized, and we were pointing out already some nice variations for black, including going for the white king, some potential mating attacks. Ralph tried to change the momentum, another important factor when you're trying to win games, by sacrificing a piece, but unfortunately it didn't work. And he created a pin. Double threat here, a pin along this diagonal and this black pawn on e5 about to drop off. But Wesley now, as usual, he defended everything, he held everything together, and rook takes pawn, he just dropped his knight back. The rook defends the knight defends every square the white rook wants to use, and just 2 moves later, we saw the beginning of the end. Black was able to hoover up this pawn and slowly but surely guide the game towards safety.
Here we go.
Queen. But
Wow.
Robert, what a move.
What a move. I love it.
Wow, what a move by Ralph Mamedov. He's going for it on the other flank as well. This could be potentially very strong and a bit of a shock to Wesley. Ralph is maybe out of desperation sacrificed a piece. This surely can't work.
Wow, all the games, day one in Champions Chess Tour 2023 have finished. How will you sum it up, Tanya?
I mean, for me, the star of the day was definitely Arjun defeating Ali Reza in those 3 games. And we saw so much drama and dominating play for the 3 matches. Ralph was the big surprise. He really had an upper hand, and I think that was slightly heartbreaking for him. And then, of course, Wesley doing Wesley things, keeping everything under control. It was truly a day filled with fighting chess and drama.
Yeah, what will be the reactions in India to Arjun Erigaisi's huge performance today?
Everyone's going to be super excited. He also plays Magnus tomorrow, and that is something we all really look forward to. Arjun's had tough results against him, but over time, he sort of realized that he needs to stop fearing Magnus so much, and he has had better performances ever since then. So a big match coming up. I think tonight is about celebrating for India, seeing Arjun go through, and of course, Gukesh gets another second chance in the losers bracket.
Yep, that's the great thing about double elimination. Everyone gets a second chance. Let's take a look at the results from the quarterfinals today. Magnus Carlsen, a dominant win against Alexei Sarana, winning 2 games. Were you impressed with Magnus today, Robert?
It was flawless.
Yeah.
It felt like Magnus was at Alexei Sarana's throat from the beginning. He never gave him a chance, so impressive display from the world champion.
And then Hikaru Nakamura also winning 2 games against Gukesh. What can you say about Hikaru's play today, David?
It was classic Hikaru, smooth, polished, very classy and very controlled. Gukesh did throw everything at him, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough. Hikaru in top form.
Yeah, and then 3 wins for Arjun Erigaisi against the other teenager, Ali Reza Farusha, to win that match. Wesley So getting that 1-game win he needed to knock Ralph Mamedov down to the losers bracket. And let's take a look at the bracket. Double elimination format this season on the Champions Chess Tour means Magnus Carlsen stays on the winners bracket to face Arjun Erigaisi in the winners semi-finals tomorrow. Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura in the other winners semi-finals also to be played tomorrow. That is best out of 4 rapid games. On the losers bracket, Sarana against Farusha, that is best out of 2 rapid games. And Mamedov against Gukesh, best out of 2 rapid games. I have to ask you, Robert, Wesley So against Hikaru Nakamura, American battle. You do hold us a favorite in that one.
I think it's a complete toss-up. I know that's a cop-out, it's a cliche, but Wesley So is so difficult to beat. And for Hikaru Nakamura, if he's thinking about that semifinals loss at the Global Championship, that could kind of make him feel like he needs to win, lose some objectivity. So I really see that both players having their chances. They've had impressive days today. Hikaru played the better chess, but tomorrow is a new one.
Yeah. And then Tanya, Arjun Erigaisi. He was crushed by Magnus Carlsen in the final of the Julius Baer Generation Cup last season, but he must have so much confidence going into that semi-finals against Magnus tomorrow.
100%. And also the fact that he made it to the finals of the Julius Baer Generation Cup. That is a huge deal as well. And I think it's going to be very critical for Arjun to just forget that he's playing Magnus and try to keep that aside. He needs to keep control on the clock, make sure that he doesn't fall a lot below, a lot behind Magnus, come up with some good opening ideas. He needs to do everything right because that's what you need to do if you have to beat Magnus.
Yeah. That is one of the winners semi-finals tomorrow, the other one. Wesley So against Hikaru Nakamura. And we're joined by Wesley. Congratulations on winning your first match of the season, Wesley.
Hi, thank you very much. It's good to see you guys again.
Very good to see you two sitting at home in Minnesota. I can see Wesley. What has today been like?
Sorry?
What has today been like in your match against Ralph Mamedov?
Oh, it's been pretty tough. I think Ralph came to the match very well prepared, especially in the opening. I didn't get anything in game 1, but I almost managed to swindle him. And game 2, he surprised me in the opening, but I replied pretty solidly. And game 3 was clearly the turning point because I prepared this line in the King's Indian, but he didn't know what to do. But I blundered the pawn on b2, and after that, I guess Black had the initiative. But I was able to outplay him in the end game. So that was nice, and game 4 was pretty safe, I guess.
How do you feel about going into matches being a big favorite like you were today, Wesley? Are you comfortable being named a big favorite?
Well, I don't think I was a big favorite. I think maybe I'm the favorite, but in a 4-game match, anything can happen. And Rauf played really well. So, I mean, it's nice to play a good match today and be able to push it through. But I mean, of course, tomorrow I'll have a tough opponent on Hikaru, and I'm sure he'd want to have his revenge from the Global Chess Championship a few months ago.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. I think today I was able to get some positions that I like, and I was able to push it through.
And Wesley, well done on today's match, of course. It's great to see you back on the tour. What are your goals for this season, and what do you think of the new format?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I knew already what my goals for this season is, because in Waikante we had that thing. But
that's true.
Yeah, you remember my goals, huh?
Wait,
but it's nice. I mean, it seems that there's new rules and new format within every year. But I like the time control with the 3-second increment, and I like match formats, even though I would prefer it to be 6 games or 8 games. But it's all good. At the same time, there are far less events this year than last year, with only 6. So it's going to be interesting. I hope to do well tomorrow, because I was watching the play-in the other day, and it's so difficult to qualify in the top 6. So I hope to do well, and if I don't qualify, then just do the play-in. But it's going to be interesting with lots of new players and lots of Grandmasters this year, and it's certainly tougher than last year.
Yeah, I remember.
But on that hand, I'm very pleased also to be seeded for the first event and playing the same event as Magnus.
I remember one of your goals, Wesley, was to win one of these Champions Chess Tour events this season. What chances do you give yourself in this one, with both Magnus in here, Hikaru that you will face tomorrow?
Yeah, I was hoping that one of them would fall early, but it didn't happen. But no, I just want to play good chess. I mean, I'm still trying to focus on classical chess this year, but I like playing this online events. I like this format. I'm not the best player in Blitz. There are many other better players than me, but with 15+3, I think I can compete.
And Wesley, congratulations so much on today's win. It was amazing to see you fight that difficult 3rd game and do your thing in the 4th one. So firstly, congratulations. And I want to just look ahead to tomorrow and ask you a little more about that, because it's such a big match for us. It's sort of like the 2 big heavyweights playing against each other. You're facing Hikaru tomorrow. What do you think you have to do well to get by tomorrow's match? And is there something that you're worried about what Hikaru brings to the board that you need to watch out for?
Well, first of all, I have to understand the format. So tomorrow is just a 4-game match?
Yes.
Okay, just a 4-game match.
Winner semi-final, and it's best out of 4 rapid games, just like today.
Okay, so it's nice. Yeah, I mean, Hikaru's been doing very well online, winning Speed Chess Championship and all those Title Tuesdays. So, I think I have to be at my very best to compete against him. Even the match in Toronto could have gone really either way. So, Hikaru plays online every day, basically, and he's got one of the highest ratings in chess.com. I think I need to get, good positions out the opening, positions that I enjoy playing, and try not to blunder anything and try to keep up on the clock. Today, my time management was not the best. And I'm also very impressed by the fact that, Hikaru won today in 3 games. And so I'm going to be checking that. And hopefully history repeats itself like from before.
Yeah. What a match it's going to be. We're already looking forward to it, Wesley. Big congratulations on your match win today. And good luck tomorrow as well.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. Wesley So, 1 out of 4 winners today, who stays on the winners bracket. Tomorrow he will play Hikaru Nakamura. And we're going to announce another winner. One of you guys at home who shared a selfie on Twitter. And here we have the winner. It is Mike D, is it?
Yeah.
Watching from work with my party
Popper.
I was going to say Cooper, but cheering for Wesley. P.S. Would love to know my workplace air quality. Well, Mike, now you can. We're going to send an Airthings device to you. It's going to be signed by Magnus Carlsen, and you can use it to measure air quality in your home. Air quality has been good in the studio today. It's been the very first day of the Champions Chess Tour 2023 season. How will you sum it up, Robert? Has it been good?
It's been amazing. We've seen some of the best players in the chess world kind of crush some of the upstarts in the chess world. And then we also saw some mesmerizing finishes. Wesley So kept us on the edge of our seat. He makes it through the semis to face off against Hikaru Nakamura. That'll be really exciting tomorrow.
Yeah. And tomorrow we will lose the first 2 players, David. 2 players on the losers bracket. They will lose their matches and be knocked out. What do you expect from day 2 of the Airthings Masters?
I think any player who is at risk of going out will want to go out in style, and I expect more of the same. Those in the losers bracket, they're shorter matches, just 2 games, but I expect more of the same. Today, everyone was going for the full point in every battle, and I can't wait to see more.
I'm so excited. And we have to remind you guys, there's also a Division 2 and Division 3 going on in the Airthings Masters. I'm just quickly taking a look at some results. Daniil Dubov has lost his match and is knocked down to the losers bracket in Division 2. You can check all of those results if you head in to chess.com and join us again tomorrow for day 2 of the Airthings Masters. The action continues and 2 players will be knocked out. Thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now. Bye.